3 letters, signed by Hercule Poirot, accuse strangers of a murder they swear they didn't commit. But Poirot sent no such letters. Who dares to use his name? Why point to Barnabas Pandy, an old man drowned in his bath, ruled an accident? And what is the meaning of 3/4? As shadows deepen around a grand estate, Poirot's little gray cells face a chilling puzzle. Is this a game of deception, or a killer's taunt? Unravel the mystery in fractional fatalities. The mystery of 3/4, divided death. Chapter 1. The accusatory letters. The late autumn sun, a pale disk veiled by London's perennial mist, cast a feeble glow over Whitehaven mansions. Hercule Poirot, impeccable in his tailored suit and polished shoes, stepped from a taxicab, his mustache quivering with the satisfaction of a morning well spent. He had just concluded a luncheon at the Savoy, where the sole moinier had been passable, though not, he reflected, up to the standards of his native Belgium. His mind, however, was not on fish but on the prospect of a quiet afternoon. A cup of tisane, and perhaps a chapter of the novel he had recently acquired. Rare indulgence for a man whose little gray cells seldom rested. As he approached the door of his flat, his porter, George, greeted him with a deferential nod. "Good afternoon, sir. A lady is waiting for you inside." Most insistent she was. Poirot's eyebrows arched. "A lady? And you permitted her entry, mon ami?" "She was quite distressed, sir," George replied, his tone apologetic. "Said it was a matter of utmost urgency. I thought it best not to keep her waiting." Poirot adjusted his Homburg hat, his curiosity piqued. "Very well, George. Let us see what urgency disrupts the tranquility of Hercule Poirot." He ascended to his flat, where the door stood slightly ajar. Within, a woman paced the sitting room, her auburn hair pinned haphazardly, her tweed coat clutched tightly about her. She turned at his entrance, her eyes flashing with a mixture of indignation and fear. "Monsieur Poirot," she exclaimed, brandishing a crumpled letter. "You have some nerve, sir, to send such a missive." Poirot, unruffled, removed his hat and placed it on the stand. "Madame, I assure you, I have sent no missive. Pray, calm yourself and explain. To whom do I have the pleasure of speaking?" The woman drew herself up, her voice trembling with outrage. "I am Sylvia Rule, and this," she thrust the letter toward him, "this accuses me of murdering a man I've never even heard of. Signed by you, Hercule Poirot." Poirot took the letter, his gloved fingers handling it as if it were a delicate artifact. The paper was of decent quality, though not exceptional, and the handwriting was precise, almost too perfect. He read aloud, "Dear Miss Rule, it has come to my attention that you are responsible for the murder of Mr. Barnabas Pandy. Such a crime cannot go unpunished. I, Hercule Poirot, intend to bring you to justice. Yours, sincerely, Hercule Poirot." Mustache twitched. "Mon Dieu, this is an outrage. I, Hercule Poirot, do not write such letters. This is a forgery, madam, and a clumsy one at that. The phrasing lacks elegance. The tone is crude. Tell me, who is this Barnabas Pandy?" Sylvia Rule's indignation faltered, replaced by confusion. "I don't know. That's what makes this so maddening. I've never heard of the man, and yet I'm accused of his murder by you." Before Poirot could respond, a sharp knock interrupted them. George opened the door to reveal a tall, angular man with a flushed face and a crumpled hat in his hand. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, his voice clipped, "I demand an explanation." Poirot sighed, sensing the afternoon's tranquility slipping away. "And you are?" "John McCraden," the man snapped, producing a letter identical in appearance to Sylvia's. "You've accused me of murdering this Pandy fellow. I'll have you know I'm a respectable architect, not some common criminal." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Another letter, you say? Most interesting. Please, monsieur, join us. It appears we are in the midst of a most peculiar conspiracy." As McCraden entered, Poirot examined the second letter. The text was nearly identical, accusing McCraden of Pandy's murder in the same stilted prose. The signature, however, was a poor imitation of his own to Floret, lacking the precise flourish he prided himself on. "These letters are not from me," Poirot declared, seating himself and gesturing for his guests to do the same. But they are sent with purpose. Tell me, Miss Rule, Monsieur Macrodin, what connection have you to one another, or to this Barnabas Pen? Sylvia and Macrodin exchanged wary glances. None, Sylvia said firmly. I've never met this man in my life. Nor I, Macrodin added, though his eyes flickered with unease. I design buildings, not plots for murder. This is absurd. Poirot steepled his fingers, his mind racing. Absurd, perhaps, but not without design. Someone wishes to unsettle you, to provoke a reaction. But why? And why use the name of Hercule Poirot? The question hung in the air, unanswered. When a third knock came, George, now visibly flustered, admitted a young woman with pale blonde hair and a trembling lip. Monsieur Poirot, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. I received your letter about my grandfather. Poirot rose, his curiosity now a blazing fire. Your grandfather, Mademoiselle Annabel Treadway, she introduced herself, clutching a third letter. My grandfather was Barnabas Pandy. He drowned in his bath 3 months ago. The coroner ruled it an accident, but your letter says I murdered him. Poirot's heart quickened. Here was the Keitha, first tangible link to the mysterious Pandy. He took the letter, noting its similarity to the others. Mademoiselle, I assure you, I did not write this. But tell me of your grandfather's death. Every detail. Si vous plot. Annabel sank into a chair, her hands twisting a handkerchief. Grandfather was old, nearly 90. He lived at Comingham Hall, our family estate in Surrey. He was frail but stubborn, insisted on bathing alone. One evening, the maid found him in the bath, submerged. The doctor said he must have slipped, hit his head. There was a bruise, but nothing suspicious. Or so we thought. Poirot's eyes narrowed. And you, mademoiselle, were you present that night? Yes, Annabel whispered. I was in the house, but I didn't see him after dinner. I loved my grandfather, Monsieur Poirot. I would never harm him. Poirot nodded, his mind cataloguing her words. 3 letters, 3 accusations, and now a death that might not be accidental. This is no coincidence, he murmured. Someone plays a dangerous game, using the name of Poirot to stir chaos. But why these 3? What binds you? Sylvia, Rule, her composure fraying, snapped. I told you, I don't know this Pandy, or these people. I run a millinery shop in Chelsea. My life is hats, not murder. Macrodin crossed his arms. And I'm an architect, with no time for nonsense. I've never set foot in Surrey, let alone this Comingham Hall. Annabel's eyes darted between them, her fear palpable. I don't understand. Why would someone accuse us? And why pretend to be you? Poirot paced, his polished shoes clicking on the parquet floor. The answer lies in the choice of victims. You, Miss Rule. You, Monsieur Macrodin, an architect. You, Mademoiselle Treadway, the granddaughter of the deceased. Seemingly unconnected, yet someone believes you share a secret or wishes you to believe it. The letters are a provocation, a challenge to Poirot himself. He paused, his green eyes gleaming. And Hercule Poirot does not refuse a challenge. The trio watched him, their expressions a mix of skepticism and hope. Sylvia spoke first. So you'll find who sent these. You'll clear our names. Mais oui, Poirot said, his voice firm. But I require your cooperation. Tell me, have any of you received other strange communications? Anonymous notes, perhaps? They shook their heads, but Macrodin hesitated. Well, not a note, but a week ago, I found a card slipped under my office door. It had only 2 words. 3 quarters. I thought it a prank, and tossed it. Poirot's mustache quivered. 3 quarters. Mon Dieu, this is a clue, most vital, and you discarded it. Macrodin flushed. I didn't think it important. I'm a busy man. Poirot sighed, his exasperation tempered by excitement. No matter. This phrase, 3 quarters, it is the thread we shall pull. It suggests a puzzle, a fraction, perhaps a division of guilt or gain. We must learn more of Barnabas Pandy and his death. He turned to Annabel. Mademoiselle, who else resides at Comingham Hall? My sister, Lenore, and her children, Annabel replied. And the staff Mrs. Black, the housekeeper, Jane, the maid, and old Mr. Dodds, the gardener. That's all. And the will of Monsieur Pandy, who inherits. Annabel hesitated. I don't know the details. Grandfather's solicitor, Mr. Lobb, handles that, but I think it was divided between Lenore and me, mostly. Poirot nodded, filing the information away. Very well. I shall visit Comingham Hall, but first, I must consult my friend Inspector Edward Catchpool of Scotland Yard. He will assist in verifying the facts of Monsieur Pandy's death. Sylvia stood, her voice sharp. And what are we to do? Live, in fear of more letters. Non, Poirot soothed. You will go about your lives, but you will observe. Note, anything unusual, strangers, odd remarks, anything that feels out of place. Report to me at once. And you, Mademoiselle Treadway, prepare your household. Poirot arrives tomorrow. As his visitors departed, Poirot stood by the window, gazing at the fog-shrouded street. The letters were a bold move, a taunt to his reputation. Whoever sent them knew of his methods, his pride, but they had underestimated Hercule Poirot. He rang for George. My coat, s'il vous plaît. I must see Inspector Catchpool at once. The porter, ever discreet, nodded. Trouble, sir. Trouble, George. Poirot smiled faintly. Nay, it is a puzzle, and Hercule Poirot is never troubled by a puzzle. Poirot found Inspector Edward Catchpool at Scotland Yard, buried in paperwork. Catchpool, a lanky man with a perpetually harried expression, looked up with a mix of relief and apprehension. Poirot, what brings you here? Not another body, I hope. Not yet, mon ami, Poirot replied, settling into a chair. But a mystery most intriguing. Tell me, have you heard of a Barnabas Pandy, lately deceased? Catchpool frowned, riffling through a stack of files. Pandy, yes, I recall something. Elderly gentleman, drowned in his bath in Surrey. Coroner ruled it accidental. Why? Poirot recounted the letters, watching Catchpool's expression shift from curiosity to alarm. 3 letters, all forged in my name, accusing 3 strangers of murder. And one of those strangers is Pandy's granddaughter. This is no coincidence, Catchpool. The inspector leaned back, rubbing his temples. You think the drowning wasn't an accident? I think nothing yet, Poirot said. I observe, I question. The phrase 3/4 intrigues me. It suggests a pattern, a division, perhaps of an inheritance, a secret, or even guilt. Catchpool sighed. You and your patterns. What's the plan? We visit Comingham Hall tomorrow, Poirot declared. But first, I require your resources. Check the records for Sylvia Rule, John McCrodden, and Annabel Treadway. Any connection to Pandy, however slight. And inquire about this 3/4. It may be a code, a name, or something more. As Catchpool jotted notes, Poirot's mind churned. The letters were not random. They were a calculated move in a larger game. Someone wished to unsettle these 3, to draw Poirot into the fray. But who? A disgruntled heir, a vengeful acquaintance, or someone with a grudge against Poirot himself. He left Scotland Yard as dusk fell, the gaslights casting long shadows. Back at Whitehaven Mansions, he prepared a tisane, its steam curling like the questions in his mind. He opened his notebook, writing, Sylvia Rule, milliner, John McCrodden, architect, Annabel Treadway, granddaughter, Barnabas Pandy, drowned. 3/4. The puzzle was incomplete, but Poirot thrived on the incomplete. He closed his eyes, letting his little gray cells dance. The letters were the opening gambit, but the game was far from over. Tomorrow, at Comingham Hall, he would find the next piece or provoke the sender to reveal themselves as he sipped his tisane. Poirot smiled. Whoever you are, mon adversaire, you have chosen poorly, for you have challenged Hercule Poirot. The following morning, Poirot and Catchpool boarded a train to Surrey. The countryside rolled past, a patchwork of fields and hedgerows under a gray sky. Catchpool, clutching a file of preliminary findings, looked uneasy. I checked the names. Poirot. Nothing obvious connects Rule or McCrodden to Pandy. Rule's shop is successful. No debts. Macrauden's firm designed a library in London. No scandals. Annabel Treadway's clean, though her sister Lenore has a reputation for a sharp tongue. Poirot nodded. And Pandy's death. Coroner's report confirms drowning. No signs of struggle, just a bruise on the temple. The bath was deep, the floor slippery. Easy enough for an old man to slip. Too easy, perhaps, Poirot murmured. We shall see. Comingham Hall loomed at the end of a winding drive, a Georgian pile of weathered stone and ivy. Its grandeur was faded, the windows dark, as if the house mourned its master. Annabel greeted them at the door, her face pale but composed. Monsieur Poirot, Inspector, thank you for coming. The hall's interior was oppressive, all dark wood and heavy drapes. Poirot's eyes swept the space, noting a portrait of an elderly man, Barnabas Pandy. He presumed his stern gaze dominating the room. Mademoiselle, may we see the place where your grandfather met his end? Annabel led them to a bathroom on the second floor, its clawfoot tub gleaming under a single window. Poirot examined the room, his fingers tracing the tub's edge. The water, it was hot. Yes, Annabel said. The maid said it was steaming when she found him. And the bruise, on which side of the head? The right, I think. The doctor said he hit it falling. Poirot knelt, inspecting the floor. Slippery, but not unusually so. Tell me, was the door locked? Annabel hesitated. No. Jane, the maid, walked right in. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Most interesting. An accident, yet the door is unlocked, the water hot, the bruise precise. We must speak to this Jane. As they descended, a woman appeared tall, severe, with dark hair pulled tightly back. Monsieur Poirot, she said, her voice cold. I'm Lenore Lavington, Annabel's sister. What's this nonsense about letters? Poirot bowed. Madame, it is no nonsense. Someone accuses your sister, and others, of murder. I seek the truth. Lenore's eyes narrowed. My father's death was an accident. You're wasting your time, perhaps Poirot said, his tone mild. But Hercule Poirot does not waste time. He finds it. As Lenore stormed off, Catchpool whispered, she's hiding something. Oui, Poirot replied. But what, and why? The chapter closed, with Poirot standing in the hall, the portrait of Barnabas Pandy staring down. The letters were a gauntlet, thrown at his feet. He would pick it up, unravel the mystery of the 3/4, and expose the mind behind the masquerade. For now, he had suspects, a death, and a phrase that echoed like a riddle. The game had begun, and Poirot was ready to play. The trio watched him, their expressions a mix of skepticism and hope. Sylvia spoke first. So you'll find who sent these. You'll clear our names. Mais oui, Poirot said, his voice firm. But I require your cooperation. Tell me, have any of you received other strange communications? Anonymous notes, perhaps? They shook their heads, but Macrauden hesitated. Well, not a note, but a week ago, I found a card slipped under my office door. It had only 2 words, 3/4. I thought it a prank and tossed it. Poirot's mustache quivered. 3/4. Mon Dieu, this is a clue, most vital, and you discarded it. Macrauden flushed. I didn't think it important. I'm a busy man. Poirot sighed, his exasperation tempered by excitement. No matter. This phrase, 3/4, it is the thread we shall pull. It suggests a puzzle, a fraction, perhaps a division of guilt or gain. We must learn more of Barnabas Pandy and his death. He turned to Annabel. Mademoiselle, who else resides at Comingham Hall? My sister, Lenore, and her children, Annabel replied. And the staff Mrs. Black, the housekeeper, Jane, the maid, and old Mr. Dodds, the gardener. That's all. And the will of Monsieur Pandy, who inherits. Annabel hesitated. I don't know the details. Grandfather's solicitor, Mr. Lobb, handles that, but I think it was divided between Lenore and me, mostly. Poirot nodded, filing the information away. Very well, I shall visit Comingham Hall, but first, I must consult my friend Inspector Edward Catchpool of Scotland Yard. He will assist in verifying the facts of Monsieur Pandy's death. Sylvia stood, her voice sharp. And what are we to do? Live, in fear of more letters? Non, Poirot soothed. You will go about your lives, but you will observe. Note anything unusual, strangers, odd remarks, anything that feels out of place. Report to me at once. And you, Mademoiselle Treadway, prepare your household. Poirot arrives tomorrow. As his visitors departed, Poirot stood by the window, gazing at the fog-shrouded street. The letters were a bold move, a taunt to his reputation. Whoever sent them knew of his methods, his pride, but they had underestimated Hercule Poirot. He rang for George. My coat, s'il vous plaît. I must see Inspector Catchpool at once. The porter, ever discreet, nodded. Trouble, sir. Trouble, George. Poirot smiled faintly. Nay, it is a puzzle, and Hercule Poirot is never troubled by a puzzle. Poirot found Inspector Edward Catchpool at Scotland Yard, buried in paperwork. Catchpool, a lanky man with a perpetually harried expression, looked up with a mix of relief and apprehension. Poirot, what brings you here? Not another body, I hope. Not yet, mon ami, Poirot replied, settling into a chair. But a mystery most intriguing. Tell me, have you heard of a Barnabas Pandy, lately deceased? Catchpool frowned, riffling through a stack of files. Pandy, yes, I recall something. Elderly gentleman, drowned in his bath in Surrey. Coroner ruled it accidental. Why? Poirot recounted the letters, watching Catchpool's expression shift from curiosity to alarm. 3 letters, all forged in my name, accusing 3 strangers of murder. And one of those strangers is Pandy's granddaughter. This is no coincidence, Catchpool. The inspector leaned back, rubbing his temples. You think the drowning wasn't an accident? I think nothing yet, Poirot said. I observe, I question. The phrase 3/4 intrigues me. It suggests a pattern, a division, perhaps of an inheritance, a secret, or even guilt. Catchpool sighed. You and your patterns. What's the plan? We visit Comingham Hall tomorrow, Poirot declared. But first, I require your resources. Check the records for Sylvia Rule, John McCraden, and Annabel Treadway. Any connection to Pandy, however slight, and inquire about this 3/4. It may be a code, a name, or something more. As Catchpool jotted notes, Poirot's mind churned. The letters were not random. They were a calculated move in a larger game. Someone wished to unsettle these 3, to draw Poirot into the fray. But who? A disgruntled heir, a vengeful acquaintance, or someone with a grudge against Poirot himself. He left Scotland Yard as dusk fell, the gaslights casting long shadows. Back at Whitehaven Mansions, he prepared a tisane, its steam curling like the questions in his mind. He opened his notebook, writing, Sylvia Rule, milliner, John McCraden, architect, Annabel Treadway, granddaughter, Barnabas Pandy, drowned. 3/4. The puzzle was incomplete, but Poirot thrived on the incomplete. He closed his eyes, letting his little gray cells dance. The letters were the opening gambit, but the game was far from over. Tomorrow, at Comingham Hall, he would find the next piece or provoke the sender to reveal themselves as he sipped his tisane. Poirot smiled. Whoever you are, mon adversaire, you have chosen poorly, for you have challenged Hercule Poirot. The following morning, Poirot and Catchpool boarded a train to Surrey. The countryside rolled past, a patchwork of fields and hedgerows under a gray sky. Catchpool, clutching a file of preliminary findings, looked uneasy. I checked the names. Poirot. Nothing obvious connects Rule or McCraden to Pandy. Rule's shop is successful. No debts. McCraden's firm designed a library in London. No scandals. Annabel Treadway's clean, though her sister Lenore has a reputation for a sharp tongue. Poirot nodded. And Pandy's death. Coroner's report confirms drowning. No signs of struggle, just a bruise on the temple. The bath was deep, the floor slippery. Easy enough for an old man to slip. Too easy, perhaps, Poirot murmured. We shall see. Comingham Hall loomed at the end of a winding drive, a Georgian pile of weathered stone and ivy. Its grandeur was faded, the windows dark, as if the house mourned its master. Annabelle greeted them at the door, her face pale but composed. Monsieur Poirot, Inspector, thank you for coming. The hall's interior was oppressive, all dark wood and heavy drapes. Poirot's eyes swept the space, noting a portrait of an elderly man, Barnabas Pandy. He presumed his stern gaze dominating the room. Mademoiselle, may we see the place where your grandfather met his end? Annabelle led them to a bathroom on the second floor, its clawfoot tub gleaming under a single window. Poirot examined the room, his fingers tracing the tub's edge. The water, it was hot. Yes, Annabelle said. The maid said it was steaming when she found him. And the bruise, on which side of the head? The right, I think. The doctor said he hit it falling. Poirot knelt, inspecting the floor. Slippery, oui, but not unusually so. Tell me, was the door locked? Annabelle hesitated. No. Jane, the maid, walked right in. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Most interesting. An accident, yet the door is unlocked, the water hot, the bruise precise. We must speak to this Jane. As they descended, a woman appeared tall, severe, with dark hair pulled tightly back. Monsieur Poirot, she said, her voice cold. I'm Lenore Lavington, Annabelle's sister. What's this nonsense about letters? Poirot bowed. Madame, it is no nonsense. Someone accuses your sister, and others, of murder. I seek the truth. Lenore's eyes narrowed. My father's death was an accident. You're wasting your time, perhaps Poirot said, his tone mild. But Hercule Poirot does not waste time. He finds it. As Lenore stormed off, Catchpool whispered, she's hiding something. Oui, Poirot replied. But what, and why? The chapter closed, with Poirot standing in the hall, the portrait of Barnabas Pandy staring down. The letters were a gauntlet, thrown at his feet. He would pick it up, unravel the mystery of the 3/4, and expose the mind behind the masquerade. For now, he had suspects, a death, and a phrase that echoed like a riddle. The game had begun, and Poirot was ready to play. Oui, Poirot said, hailing a cab with a flourish of his cane. But first, we must consider the letters themselves. 4 recipients, all accused of a murder that was deemed accidental. This is no coincidence. Catchpool, someone wishes to unsettle these individuals, to provoke them. But why? What do Sylvia Rule, John McCraden, Annabelle Treadway, and Hugo Dockerel have in common? That is the question. The cab pulled up, its engine sputtering in the cold. As they climbed in, Poirot's voice took on a conspiratorial tone. And this figure, Dockerel saw this man in a long coat. He is a shadow in our puzzle, a piece that does not yet fit. We must find him, Catchpool, for I suspect he holds the key to the letter writer's purpose. The cab rolled through London's streets, past vendors, hawking newspapers, and women in fur-rimmed coats, hurrying against the wind. Catchpool leaned back, his mind racing. Poirot's words had a way of making the ordinary seem sinister, the mundane a clue to something vast and intricate. He thought of Dockerel's trembling hands, the ink-stained blotter, the fleeting glimpse of a stranger by the Pandy estate. What did it all mean? And why had someone gone to such lengths to forge Poirot's name? As the cab turned toward Scotland Yard, Poirot spoke again, his voice soft but resolute. The letters, Catchpool, they are not merely accusations, they are a challenge. Someone plays a game with Hercule Poirot, and I do not lose at games. The day stretched into afternoon, and Poirot insisted on a brief detour to a small tea shop near Covent Garden, claiming the need for sustenance for the mind. The shop, with its lace curtains and the aroma of freshly baked scones, was a haven of warmth against the gray drizzle outside. Over a pot of Darjeeling and a plate of buttery pastries, Poirot spread the 4 letters, those of Sylvia Rule, John McCraden, Annabelle Treadway, and now Hugo Dockerel across the table, arranging them like pieces of a chessboard. Look, Catchpool, he said, tapping the paper with a manicured finger. The type is identical, the phrasing precise. This is no amateur's work. The forger, he is meticulous, yet he chooses victims who seem unconnected. Sylvia, a widow with a temper. John, a man of business with a grudge. Annabelle, a granddaughter with grief. And Hugo, a schoolmaster with secrets. What is the thread that binds them? Catchpool sipped his tea, frowning. Pandy's death, obviously. But if it was an accident, as the coroner ruled, why accuse them of murder? And why use your name? Poirot's eyes sparkled. Exactement. The use of my name. It is a provocation. The letter writer wishes to draw me in, to make me part of the game. But what is the prize? That we must discover. They finished their tea and returned to Scotland Yard, where Catchpool requested the coroner's report on Barnabas Pandy's death. The report was brief but detailed. Pandy, aged 70, had been found in his bathtub, drowned. No signs of struggle, no bruises or marks. The water was tepid, the room undisturbed. The coroner had concluded accidental death, likely due to a slip or fainting spell. Yet Poirot's expression, as he read the report, was one of quiet skepticism. No struggle, no marks, he murmured. And yet, Folletta's claim murder. This is not the work of a prankster. Catchpool. This is deliberate, calculated. That evening, they retired to Poirot's flat, a sanctuary of order and elegance. The fire crackled in the grate, casting shadows on the polished mahogany furniture. Poirot paced, his hands clasped behind his back, while Catchpool sprawled in an armchair, reviewing his notes. Dockerill's story about the figure by the estate. Catchpool said, "It's vague, but it's something. Should we investigate the Pandy estate next? Annabelle and Lenore might know more about this stranger." Poirot stopped pacing, his eyes alight. But first, we must understand the letter's purpose. They accuse, but they do not demand. There is no blackmail, no threat beyond exposure. This suggests a personal motive, a desire to unsettle, to provoke fear. And this figure Dockerill saw, he is no mere bystander. He is a clue, perhaps the key. Catchpool yawned, the day's events weighing on him. "You think is this man in the coat?" "Perhaps," Poirot said, "or perhaps he is a pawn in a larger game. Tomorrow, we visit the Pandy estate. There, I suspect, we shall find the next piece of our puzzle." As Catchpool bid goodnight and stepped into the cold London night, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched not by a figure in a coat, but by the letter writer himself, lurking in the shadows, waiting for Poirot to make his move. The game, it seemed, had only just begun. Chapter 3. The Pandy Estate. The train to Comingham rattled through the English countryside, its rhythmic clatter a soothing counterpoint to the storm brewing in Hercule Poirot's mind. Seated in a plush first-class carriage, the diminutive detective adjusted his impeccable mustache, his sharp eyes darting to the passing fields of frost-kissed green. Beside him, Inspector Edward Catchpool, a lanky man with a perpetually furrowed brow, scribbled notes in a worn leather journal. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of coal smoke and the promise of secrets waiting to be unearthed at the Pandy estate. "Mon ami," Poirot said, his voice precise as a metronome. "You write as if the paper might escape. What troubles you?" Catchpool sighed, closing his journal with a snap. "It's this case, Poirot. 4 letters, all accusing different people of murdering a man who, by all accounts, drowned accidentally. It's like chasing a shadow in a fog." Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile. "Shadows, Catchpool, are cast by something real. We shall find the source at the Pandy estate. The letters, they are not random, they are arrows, pointing to a truth we have yet to grasp." The journey to Comingham was brief, but the winding road to the Pandy estate stretched time into an eternity. The estate loomed at the end of a gravel drive, a sprawling Georgian manor of weathered stone, its windows like unblinking eyes. Ivy clung to the walls, curling like the tendrils of a mystery that refused to let go. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, and a chill wind whispered through the skeletal branches of ancient oaks. As Poirot and Catchpool stepped from their hired car, the front door creaked open, revealing Annabelle Treadway. She was a woman of middle years, her pale face framed by a cascade of auburn hair streaked with silver, her eyes wide and haunted, betrayed a fragility that contrasted with the rigid posture of her navy dress. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice trembling like a leaf in a storm. "I've been expecting you. Please, come in." The entrance hall was a cavern of faded grandeur. A chandelier hung above, its crystals dulled by dust, casting fractured light across a marble floor. Portraits of stern-faced pandies lined the walls, their gazes seeming to follow the visitors. Annabel led them to a drawing room where a fire crackled, its warmth doing little to dispel the gloom. The furniture, though elegant, bore the scars of time-frayed upholstery, chipped mahogany, a sense of a house holding its breath. "Miss Treadway," Poirot began, settling into an armchair with the grace of a cat. "You say your grandfather, Barnabas Pandy, died by accident. Yet these letters, they suggest otherwise. Tell me, what was he like, this man?" Annabel's hands twisted in her lap, her fingers knotting like the roots of an old tree. "Grandfather was formidable, a man of numbers, always scribbling equations in his study. He built his fortune in trade, but his heart was in mathematics. He was kind to me, but distant with others. My sister Lenore often clashed with him. She strong-willed, catchpool, standing by the fireplace, raised an eyebrow. Clashed how?" Before Annabel could answer, the door swung open, and Lenore Lavington strode in. She was a stark contrast to her sister, tall, angular, with jet black hair pulled into a severe bun. Her eyes, sharp as flint, assessed Poirot and Catchpool with undisguised suspicion. "So, the famous detective," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "Come to stir up trouble over a drowning that's already been settled." Poirot's smile was serene, but his eyes gleamed like polished steel. "Madame Lavington, the truth, it does not settle so easily. 4 letters, accusing 4 people of murder, suggest a disturbance in the order of things. I seek only to restore that order," Lenore snorted, crossing her arms. "You're wasting your time. Father drowned in his bath. The coroner said so. These letters are someone's cruel joke." "Perhaps," Poirot said, his tone light but probing. "Yet jokes, they often conceal a deeper intent. Tell me, what was your relationship with your father?" Lenore's jaw tightened, but before she could speak, a soft voice interrupted from the doorway. "Excuse me, Mom." A young maid, no older than 20, stood there, her apron pristine but her hands trembling. Her name, Poirot would later learn, was Whodunit the climbing plant, but a girl with wide, fearful eyes and a mop of chestnut curls barely contained by her cap. "I've brought tea," she said, pushing a trolley laden with a silver service. "Thank you, Ivy," Annabel said, her voice softening. "Just leave it there." As Ivy arranged the cups, her movements were jerky, her eyes darting to Lenore, as if expecting a reprimand. Poirot watched her closely, noting the way her fingers lingered on a saucer, the faint tremor in her wrist. "Mademoiselle Ivy," he said, his voice gentle as a breeze, "you have worked here long." Ivy froze, her cheeks flushing. "A year, sir." "Just a year. And you knew Monsieur Pandy?" She nodded, her eyes fixed on the floor. "He was kind, sir. Always left a sweet on my tray when I brought his tea. Not many masters do that." Lenore's lips thinned. "That's enough, Ivy. You're not here to chatter." Ivy flinched, retreating to the trolley, but as she turned, her elbow caught a small jade figurine, on a side table a delicate carving of a crane, its wings poised for flight. The figurine teetered, then fell, shattering into fragments on the hardwood floor. Ivy gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. "Oh no, I'm so sorry, Miss Annabel." Annabel rushed to her side, her face pale. "It's all right, Ivy. It was an accident." Lenore's voice cut through the room like a whip. "An accident. That was Mother's favorite piece. Father kept it to honor her memory, and now it's ruined." Poirot's eyes narrowed, his mind seizing on the moment. "This figurine," he said, rising to inspect the shards. "It was cherished, yes, yet it's set so precariously. Tell me, Mademoiselle Ivy, was it always placed there?" Ivy hesitated, her eyes flicking to Annabel. I think so, sir. I don't move things, I just dust." Poirot knelt, picking up a fragment of jade, its edge glinting in the firelight. Curious, he murmured. A treasure so valued, yet so icily lost. Perhaps it is not the only thing missing from this house. Lenore's eyes flashed. What are you implying? Poirot stood, brushing his hands. I imply nothing, madame, I observed. And I wonder why does a maid tremble so in the presence of her mistress? Why does a sister speak so sharply to another? And why does a figurine, so precious, fall so easily? The room fell silent, the crackle of the fire the only sound. Annabelle's hands shook as she gathered the broken pieces. Her eyes avoiding Poirot's. Catchpool, sensing the tension, cleared his throat. Perhaps we should see Mr. Pandy's study, he suggested. It might shed light on these letters. Annabelle nodded, rising. This way. The study was a sanctuary of order amidst the house's decay. Bookshelves lined the walls, crammed with tomes on mathematics, trade, and philosophy. A heavy oak desk dominated the room, its surface cluttered with papers and inkwell, and a brass abacus that gleamed like a relic from another age. Poirot's eyes swept the room, lingering on a small, locked cabinet in the corner. What is kept there? He asked. Annabelle hesitated. Grandfather's private papers. I don't have the key. Lenore, who had followed them, scoffed. No one does. Father was paranoid about his work. He said it was too dangerous for anyone else to see. Dangerous. Poirot's voice was soft, but his eyes were sharp. What manner of danger does a mathematician face? Lenore shrugged, but her nonchalance seemed forced. He was eccentric, always talking about fractions and fatalities, as if they meant something profound. Poirot's fingers twitched, his little gray cells humming. Fractions and fatalities, he repeated, a curious pairing. Tell me, madame, did your father ever speak of three-quarters? Annabelle's breath caught, and Lenore's eyes narrowed. Not that I recall, Lenore said, but her voice lacked conviction. Poirot moved to the desk, his gloved fingers tracing the edge of a ledger. This room, he said, it is the heart of the mystery. Here, Monsieur Pandy thought his thoughts, dreamed his dreams. And perhaps, here, he met his end. Catchpool, flipping through a stack of papers, paused. Look at this, Poirot. He held up a letter, its handwriting neat but unsigned. It read, Beware, the three-quarters. They will undo you. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Mon Dieu, Catchpool, the phrase again. It is no coincidence. As they examined the letter, a faint noise came from the hallway, a soft thud, like a footstep on the creaking floorboards. Ivy appeared at the door, her face pale. Beg pardon, sir, but there's someone at the gate. A man, asking for Miss Annabelle. Annabelle's hands flew to her throat. Who is it? Ivy swallowed. He wouldn't give his name, Miss, but he's got a scar on his cheek, like a crescent moon. Lenore's face hardened. Tell him to leave. We don't entertain strangers. But Poirot raised a hand. Nan, let us meet this man. A scar, it is a mark of distinction. Perhaps he brings a piece of our puzzle. They followed Ivy to the front gate, where a man stood in the gathering dusk. He was tall, his coat tattered, his face weathered but handsome, marred by a crescent-shaped scar. His eyes, dark and piercing, locked onto Annabelle. Miss Treadway, he said, his voice low and rough. We need to talk about your grandfather and about Timothy. Annabelle swayed, clutching the gate for support. Timothy, she whispered. How do you know that name? The man's smile was grim. Because I'm the one who helped him disappear. Poirot's heart quickened, his mind racing. The Pandy estate, with its secrets and shadows, was no longer just a house. It was a stage, and the players were assembling. The jade figurine, the cryptic letter, the mysterious stranger. They were threads in a tapestry he would unravel. As the wind howled through the oaks, Poirot felt the thrill of the chase, his resolve hardening. The truth was close, hidden in the gloom, and he would find it. The Pandy estate seemed to pulse with secrets as Poirot and Catchpool followed the stranger into the drawing room. Annabelle trailed behind, her face a mask of dread, while Lenore's eyes burned with suspicion. The man introduced himself as Gideon Marsh, a former associate of Barnabas Pandy's, his voice carrying the weight of a man who had seen too much. The firelight cast shadows across his scarred face, giving him an almost spectral appearance. "Speak, Monsieur Marsh," Poirot said, settling into his chair with a precision that belied the storm of questions in his mind. "You mentioned Timothy. Who is he, and what is his connection to this affair?" Marsh leaned against the mantel, his fingers tracing the edge as if grounding himself. "Timothy is Pandy's son. Not with his wife, mind you, born out of wedlock to a woman in London. Pandy kept him hidden, sent him money, but never acknowledged him publicly. Timothy grew bitter, resentful. Last I saw him, he was plotting something against his father." Annabelle's voice was barely a whisper. "Timothy, he came here once, years ago. Grandfather sent him away. I thought he was gone for good." Lenore's laugh was sharp, cutting through the tension. "A bastard son. This is nonsense. Father would never have been so careless." Marsh's eyes flicked to Lenore, cold and unyielding. "Careless or not, Timothy exists, and he knows things about the estate, about Pandy's work. I helped him vanish after Pandy threatened to cut him off entirely. But now, with those letters," Poirot's fingers steepled, his mind weaving connections. "These letters, Monsieur Marsh, they accuse four people of murder. You suggest Timothy may be involved. Why?" Marsh hesitated, his scar twitching as he clenched his jaw. "Because Timothy hated Pandy enough to want him dead. And he's clever enough to stir up trouble without showing his hand." Catchpole, pacing near the window, turned sharply. "If Timothy's behind the letters, why accuse four people? Why not just point to one?" Marsh shrugged, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. Maybe he wanted to muddy the waters. Or maybe someone else is using his name. Poirot's gaze shifted to Annabelle, who sat rigid, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. "Mademoiselle Annabelle," he said softly, "you knew of Timothy. Did you know of his hatred?" She shook her head, tears brimming. "I only met him once. He was angry, but I thought it was just a moment. Grandfather said it was handled." Lenore slammed her hand on the arm of her chair. "This is absurd. You're all chasing ghosts. Father drowned. There's no murder, no Timothy, no conspiracy." Poirot's smile was serene, but his eyes were relentless. "Madame, the truth does not bend to anger. The jade figurine, it is broken. The letter in the study speaks of 3/4. A man with a scar arrives, speaking of a hidden heir. These are not ghosts, they are facts, and they demand explanation." The room fell silent, the fire's crackle, a stark contrast to the tension. Ivy, who had lingered near the door, slipped out, her footsteps echoing in the hall. Poirot noted her departure, his mind cataloging her fear, her clumsiness, her presence at every key moment. Was she merely a nervous maid, or something more? "Monsieur Marsh," Poirot said, rising, "you will remain here tonight. The Pandy estate, it is a puzzle, and you are a piece I must understand. Catchpole, we shall explore the grounds. The answers, they lie not only in words, but in the shadows of this place." As they stepped into the chilly evening, the estate's gardens stretched before them, a labyrinth of hedges and frost-covered roses. The moon hung low, casting silver light across a small pond where Pandy had kept ornamental fish, their scales glinting like coins in the water. Catchpole shivered, pulling his coat tighter. "This place gives me the creeps, Poirot. It's like the house itself is watching us." Poirot chuckled softly. "The house, it does not watch, mon ami, but it holds secrets. Look there." He pointed to a stone bench near the pond, its surface marred by deep scratches. "These marks, they are fresh. Someone has been here, perhaps in haste." Catchpole knelt, running his fingers over the scratches. "Could be nothing. A gardener, maybe. Or," Poirot said, his voice low, "someone who wished to hide something. Or to watch." They moved deeper into the gardens, the air growing colder, the shadows thicker. A rustling in the hedges made Catchpole jump, but Poirot's hand on his arm steadied him. "Calm, Catchpole. It is only the wine door, perhaps our friend with the scar." But it was not Marsh who emerged from the shadows. It was Ivy, her face pale, her apron clutched in her hands. "Monsieur Poirot," she whispered, her voice trembling. I heard something. Out here, last night. Voices, near the pond. Poirot, eyes narrowed. Voices, mademoiselle. What did they say? Ivy swallowed, her eyes darting to the house. I couldn't make it out. But one was a man's, low and angry. The other, it sounded like Miss Lenore. Poirot's heart quickened, but his face remained impassive. Merci, Mademoiselle Ivy. You have been most helpful. Return to the house, and say nothing of this. As Ivy hurried away, Catchpool whistled. Softly, Lenore, out here at night, with a man. This gets murkier by the minute. Indeed, Poirot said, his eyes scanning the darkness. The Pandy estate is a stage, and we are only beginning to see the players. The figurine, the letter, the scratches, the voices, they are notes in a symphony of deceit. But fear not, Catchpool Hercule Poirot will conduct this orchestra to its finale. The night closed around them, the estate's secrets whispering in the wind. The jade figurine's loss was no accident. Poirot was certain, nor was Pan. Death. The three quarters loomed like a specter, and Timothy's shadow stretched across the puzzle. As they returned to the house, Poirot's mind burned with purpose, the thrill of the chase igniting his soul. The truth was near, hidden, in the gloom, and he would not rest until it was his. Chapter 4. The Solicitor's Confession that Drizzle had painted. London, in a sheen of grey, as Hercule Poirot and Inspector Edward Catchpool stepped out of their cab, their polished shoes clicking against the wet cobblestones of Chancery Lane. The solicitor's office of Mr. Vincent Lobb stood unassumingly between a tailor's shop and a narrow alley, its brass plaque gleaming faintly under the gaslight. Poirot, his mustache impeccably groomed despite the damp, adjusted his hat and murmured, "This place, mon ami, it whispers secrets before we even knock." Catchpool, ever practical, raised an eyebrow. "It's just an office, Poirot. Let's hope Lobb's more forthcoming than Dockeril was." The memory of Hugo Dockeril's nervous fidgeting and vague allusions to a shadowy figure near the Pandy estate still rankled Catchpool. Poirot, however, seemed invigorated, his green eyes glinting with the thrill of a puzzle deepening. Inside, the office was a study in faded grandeur. Mahogany shelves lined with leather-bound tomes, a thread Persian rug, and a heavy desk cluttered with papers. Vincent Lobb, a wiry man in his late 50s, with thinning hair and spectacles perched precariously on his nose, rose to greet them. His handshake was clammy, his smile strained. "Mr. Poirot, Inspector Catchpool," he said, gesturing to two chairs upholstered in cracked leather. "I confess, I was surprised to receive your note. This business, with Mr. Pandy's death most distressing." Poirot settled into his chair, his posture as precise as a metronome. "Monsieur Lobb, it is not only the death of Barnabas Pandy that brings us here, but a series of letters most curious, accusing certain individuals of his murder. You, as his solicitor, must shed light on the affairs of his estate. N'est-ce pas?" Lobb's fingers twitched, betraying a flicker of unease. "Letters. I'm afraid I know nothing of such things. My role was purely administrative. Trusts, the usual." Catchpool leaned forward, his notebook open. "Yet you were close to Pandy. You drafted his will, handled his finances. Surely you'd know if someone had reason to wish him harm." Lobb's gaze darted to a silver inkstand on his desk, as if it held the answers he sought. "Mr. Pandy was a private man, generous, but guarded. I managed his legal matters for nearly a decade, but I wouldn't say I knew him intimately." Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile. "Intimacy, Monsieur Lobb, is not required for knowledge. You see, the will of a man is a map of his heart, his fears, his desires. Tell me, what did the map of Barnabas Pandy reveal?" Lobb hesitated, then sighed, as if resigning himself to a truth he could no longer sidestep. "Very well. Mr. Pandy altered his will 6 weeks before his death. It was unexpected." "Unexpected." Poirot's voice was soft, but his eyes were sharp as a hawk's. "In what manner?" Lobb removed his spectacles, polishing them with a handkerchief. He favored his granddaughter, Annabel Treadway, over her sister, Lenore. The bulk of his estate, his fortune, the Pandy estate, His investments went to Annabelle. Lenore received a modest annuity, enough to live comfortably, but nothing compared to her sister's share. Catchpool scribbled furiously, glancing up, and Lenore knew of this change. She did, Lob admitted, his voice dropping. Mr. Pandy informed both sisters himself, though I urged him to let me handle it. Lenore was furious. She stormed into this office the day after, demanding I reverse it. I explained I had no such power. She left in a temper, muttering about betrayal. Poirot tilted his head, his fingers steepled. And you, Monsieur Lob, did you find this alteration just, or did it stir, perhaps, your own sense of fairness? Lob's face flushed. I don't follow your meaning, Mr. Poirot. I merely executed my client's wishes. Bean, Sir Poirot said smoothly. Yet, the human heart is not so easily silenced. Tell me, did you receive anything unusual in the days following Mr. Pandy's death? The solicitor froze, his hands gripping the edge of his desk. For a moment, the only sound was the patter of rain against a window. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, Lob said, I received a note, anonymous. It arrived 2 days after the coroner declared Pandy's death an accident. Catchpool's pen paused. A note. What did it say? Lob reached into a drawer, producing a small envelope. He slid it across the desk, his fingers trembling. Poirot opened it with delicate precision, revealing a single sheet of paper, typed in crisp black ink. Beware the 3/4. The truth lies in fractions. Poirot read it aloud, his voice savoring each word. Most intriguing, this phrase, 3/4. What does it mean to you, Monsieur Lob? The solicitor shook his head, his eyes wide. I haven't the faintest idea. I thought it some cruel prank, perhaps from a disgruntled client, but it unsettled me. I've kept it locked away since. Catchpool frowned. Why didn't you report it to the police? Lob's laugh was brittle. Report an anonymous note. I'd have been laughed out of Scotland Yard. Besides, Pandy's death was ruled an accident. I saw no reason to stir trouble. Gaze lingered on Lob, as if peeling back layers of his composure. And yet, monsieur, trouble has found you. This note, it is no prank. It is a thread in a tapestry of deception. Tell me, what else do you know of Barnabas Pandy's final days? Lob shifted uncomfortably, his fingers tracing the edge of the inkstand. He was preoccupied. He mentioned a project, something about numbers. He called it his fractional theory. I thought it a quirk, an old man's fancy. He was always fond of puzzles. Numbers. Poirot's interest sharpened. Elaborate, si vous plot. He spoke of patterns, of things divided unevenly. He said, the world is not whole, Vincent. It is broken into parts, and those parts do not add up. I didn't understand, but he seemed agitated. He even asked me to secure certain documents in my safe, papers he didn't want found at the estate. And these papers, Catchpool asked, leaning forward. Lob swallowed. They're still here. I haven't touched them since his death. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Then, monsieur, we must see them. At once, Lob led them to a heavy iron safe tucked behind a bookcase. With a key from his waistcoat, he unlocked it, retrieving a slim folder tied with twine. Inside were pages of handwritten notes, filled with cryptic diagrams and scrawled equations. At the top of one page, in Pandy's precise hand, were the words, fractional fatalities. The 3/4 Catchpool peered over Poirot's shoulder. What the devil does that mean? Poirot traced a finger along the page, his expression one of delight. It means, mon ami, that Monsieur Pandy was not merely an eccentric. He was a man who saw patterns where others saw chaos. This 3/4, it is the key to our mystery. But what does it unlock? Lob, now visibly shaken, sank into his chair. I swear, I knew nothing of this. I thought it was just ramblings. Poirot closed the folder, tucking it under his arm. Ramblings, Monsieur Lob, do not inspire murder. And the first Hercule Poirot now believed that Barnabas Pandy did not drown by accident. Someone ensured his silence. And these letters, these accusations, a mask for a deeper truth. Catchpool's jaw tightened. You're saying Pandy was murdered? Precisement, Poirot replied, his voice firm. The question is not only who, but why this phrase, 3/4, haunts our investigation. Monsieur Lob, you have been most helpful, though perhaps not as forthcoming as you might wish to believe. Lob's face paled. I've told you everything I know. Poirot smiled, but it was a smile that held no warmth. We shall see, monsieur. The little gray cells, they do not rest, and they are never deceived. As they stepped back into the rain-soaked street, Catchpool muttered, That man's hiding something, Poirot. He's too nervous for an innocent solicitor. Perhaps, Poirot said, his eyes distant. But it is not only Lob who hides. The truth, mon ami, is like a shadow, it moves with the light. We must find the source of that light. The cab ride back to Poirot's flat was quiet, save for the clatter of hooves and the rhythm of the rain. Poirot clutched the folder, his mind already weaving the threads of Pandy's notes, the letters, and Lob's confession into a pattern only he could see. The phrase 3/4 echoed in his thoughts, a riddle that promised to unravel the heart of the mystery. Back at his flat, Poirot spread the papers across his dining table, the lamplight casting long shadows over the cryptic diagrams. Catchpool paced, his frustration palpable. It's all nonsense, Poirot. Fractions, fatalities. What was Pandy playing at? Not nonsense, mon ami, Poirot said, his voice soft but certain. Order Pandy saw something dangerous, and someone ensured he would never share it. The chapter closed, with Poirot poring over the notes, his little gray cells alight with possibility. As the rain continued to fall outside, a quiet counterpoint to the storm brewing within the case. Chapter 5. The coffee-house conspiracy. The London air was thick with the scent of coal smoke and damp cobblestones as Hercule Poirot navigated the bustling streets of Bloomsbury. His polished shoes clicked rhythmically against the pavement, a metronome to his racing thoughts. The mystery of the accusatory letters gnawed at him. Each new clue a tantalizing breadcrumb in a trail that twisted through deception and half-truths. The morning had brought a fresh lead, whispered to him by a nervous maid at the Pandy estate. Sylvia Rule, one of the letter recipients, had been seen in a heated exchange at a coffee-house called the Gilded Bean. Poirot's little gray cells hummed with anticipation. A public place, a clandestine meeting. Surely this was no coincidence. The Gilded Bean sat nestled between a bookbinder's shop and a tailor's, its windows fogged with the warmth of steaming kettles and the chatter of patrons. A brass bell jangled as Poirot pushed open the door, releasing a wave of roasted coffee and buttery pastry into the chill morning. The interior was a cozy chaos of mismatched chairs, chipped teacups, and the low hum of conversation. Waitresses in starched aprons darted between tables, balancing trays with the grace of acrobats. Poirot's sharp eyes scanned the room, settling on a young woman with a shock of red curls and a mischievous smile. Her apron read Elsie, and she was precisely the person he sought. He approached the counter, where Elsie was polishing a glass with a vigor that suggested she was scrubbing away the world's troubles. Mademoiselle Elsie, Poirot began, his voice smooth as velvet. I am Hercule Poirot, and I am told you possess information most vital to my investigation. Elsie's eyes widened, then narrowed with a spark of curiosity. Blimey, you're that detective, ain't you? Heard you sniffing round about them letters. What's a fancy gent like you want with me? Her tone was playful, but her gaze was sharp, assessing him like a jeweler inspecting a gem. Poirot smiled, tipping his hat slightly. You are observant, mademoiselle. I am told you overheard a conversation involving Madame Sylvia Rule, a woman who claims to be falsely accused. What can you tell me of this? Elsie leaned forward, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. Right, then, couple o' weeks back, I saw Sylvia posh lady, all silk and pearls sittin' in that corner booth. She jerked her thumb toward a secluded table, half hidden by a velvet curtain. She was with a man, not her husband, mind you. Looked like they was plotting something fierce. He had this scarf bright red with gold threads, like something out of a sultan's wardrobe. Never seen anything so flashy in here. Poirot's mustache twitched, A sign his mind was seizing on the detail. "This scarf, mademoiselle. Describe it further, if you please." And the man, what was his demeanor? Elsie grinned, clearly enjoying her role as informant. Scarf was long, silky, with these little tassels dangling off the ends. The man, oh, he was a proper odd duck, tall, thin as a lamppost, with a nose like a hawk, kept fidgeting, looking over his shoulder like he expected a ghost to pop up. Sylvia was doing most of the talking, something about fixing a mistake and making sure it's done proper. Sounded like they was cooking up a scheme, if you ask me. Poirot's mind raced. Sylvia Rule had claimed ignorance of Barnabas Pandy, yet here was evidence of a clandestine meeting, a scheme no less. And did you hear, perhaps, any mention of a name? Pandy, perhaps, or letters? Elsie tapped her chin, her eyes drifting upward as if the memory were painted on the ceiling. "Pandy, you say? Might have heard that name. Yeah." Sylvia said something like, "Pandy's gone, but it's not over." Made my ears prick up, 'cause it sounded serious. Then the man hissed at her to keep her voice down. They left soon after, but I saw her pass him a little envelope sealed. Mind you, looked important. Poirot's heart quickened. An envelope. Could it be related to the accusatory letters? Or was this a separate thread in the tapestry of deceit? "You have been most helpful, Mademoiselle Elsie. Tell me, this man with the scarf, did he return to the Gilded Bean?" "Nah," Elsie said, shaking her head. "Haven't seen him since. But Sylvia's been back, all twitchy-like. Yesterday, she was in here, pacing by the window, muttering to herself, kept checking a pocket watch, like she was waiting for someone who never showed." Poirot nodded, his mind assembling the pieces. Sylvia's connection to Pandy, however tenuous, was now undeniable. The man with the scarf was a new player in this drama, and the envelope suggested a transaction, perhaps a payment, a threat, or a clue to the letter writer's identity. "Mercy, mademoiselle, your memory is a treasure. If you see this man again, you will inform me, yes." He slid a card across the counter, his name embossed in elegant script. Elsie pocketed the card with a wink. "For a detective, you're not half bad. I'll keep my eyes peeled." Poirot stepped back into the street, the bell jangling behind him. The morning had grown busier, with horse-drawn cabs clattering past and vendors hawking their wares. He pulled his coat tighter against the chill, his mind alight with possibilities. Sylvia Rule's meeting suggested she was not the innocent victim she claimed to be. But was she the mastermind behind the letters, or merely a pawn in a larger game? The man with the scarf was the key, and Poirot resolved to find him. He hailed a cab and directed it to Scotland Yard, where Edward Catchpool awaited. The journey gave Poirot time to sketch a mental timeline. Sylvia's meeting at the Gilded Bean occurred before she received the accusatory letter, suggesting she was already entangled in Pandy's affairs. The phrase, "Pandy's gone, but it's not," over-echoed in his mind. It implied unfinished business, perhaps a motive for murder or for the letters themselves. At Scotland Yard, Catchpool was buried in paperwork, his desk a chaos of files and ink blots. He looked up as Poirot entered, his expression a mix of exasperation and relief. "Poirot, you're a sight for sore eyes. This case is driving me to distraction. For letters, for accusations, and not a shred of evidence to pin them on anyone." Poirot raised a hand, his eyes gleaming. "Patience, mon ami. I have uncovered a thread most intriguing." At the Gilded Bean, Sylvia Rule was seen plotting with a man in a red and gold scarf. They spoke of Pandy, of fixing a mistake. An envelope changed hands. "This is no coincidence, Catchpool." Catchpool's eyebrows shot up. Sylvia Rule. She swore she'd never heard of Pandy until that letter arrived. "You're saying she lied?" "Precisement," Poirot said, pacing the cramped office. "The question is, why? Was she protecting herself or someone else? We must uncover this man with the scarf. He is, I believe, the pivot on which this mystery turns." Catchpool scribbled notes, his pen scratching furiously. "Right? A man with a flashy scarf shouldn't be hard to track. I'll put out inquiries, gentlemen's clubs, tailors, anyone who might know him." What else did this Elsie say? Poirot recounted Elsie's tale, emphasizing the envelope and Sylvia's nervous return to the coffee house. She waits for someone who does not come, he mused. Perhaps this man, or perhaps another. We must also revisit Sylvia Rule. Her story, it crumbles like a poorly baked soufflé. The afternoon found Poirot and Catchpool at Sylvia Rule's elegant townhouse, its facade as pristine as her carefully curated persona. A butler ushered them into a drawing room adorned with crystal chandeliers and silk wallpaper. Sylvia appeared moments later, her composure faltering at the sight of Poirot's piercing gaze. She wore a dress of emerald green, her blonde hair swept into a chignon, but her hands betrayed her fidgeting with a lace handkerchief. "Monsieur Poirot, Inspector Catchpool," she said, her voice a touch too bright. "To what do I owe this visit? Have you found the scoundrel who sent those dreadful letters?" Poirot tilted his head, studying her as a painter might study a canvas. "Madame Rule, let us dispense with pretense. You were seen at the Gilded Bean, in the company of a man with a most distinctive scarf. You spoke of Barnabas Pandy, and a mistake to be fixed. An envelope was exchanged. What, I ask, was the nature of this transaction?" Sylvia's face paled, her handkerchief twisting into knots. I don't know what you mean. The Gilded Bean. I may have taken tea there, but I assure you, I've never discussed Pandy with anyone. This is outrageous." Madame Poirot said, his voice soft but unyielding. "The eyes of a waitress are sharp, and her memory sharper. You heard. You passed an envelope. You said Pandy's gone, but it's not over. Deny it, and you insult the truth." Sylvia sank into a chair, her bravado crumbling. "Very well," she whispered. "I did meet someone. His name is Roland Farquhar. We had business dealings with Pandy years ago. A property venture that went sour. Pandy swindled us, left us with nothing. Roland was furious, said we should confront Pandy, demand restitution. But then Pandy died, and it was too late." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And the envelope, Madame, what did it contain?" Sylvia hesitated, her lips trembling. "It was a letter, not like the ones you're investigating. It was a demand, a draft we meant to send to Pandy before his death. Roland wrote it, but I kept it. I thought it might protect us, show we had no reason to harm Pandy." Catchpool, standing by the fireplace, crossed his arms. "Protect you, or cover your tracks. If Pandy swindled you, that's motive for murder, Mrs. Rule." "No," Sylvia cried, her voice cracking. "I swear, I didn't kill him. Roland and I were angry, yes, but we're not murderers. Those letters accusing me their lies meant to torment me." Poirot leaned forward, his gaze unrelenting. "And yet, Madame, you lied about knowing Pandy. You lied about your meeting at the Gilded Bean. Why should Hercule Poirot believe you now?" Sylvia's eyes filled with tears, but Poirot sensed calculation behind her distress. She was a woman, accustomed to bending the truth to her will, like a sculptor molding clay. "I was afraid," she said at last. "Afraid you'd think I had something to do with his death. But I didn't, I swear it." Poirot stood, adjusting his gloves with deliberate care. "We shall see, Madame. The truth, it is like a diamond hidden in the rough, but always revealed. In time, we will find this, Monsieur Farquhar, and we will learn what you both planned." As they left the townhouse, Catchpool muttered, "She's hiding something, Poirot. That story about a business deal doesn't add up. Why keep that letter a secret if it's so innocent?" Poirot nodded, his eyes distant. "The letter AMI is the key. Was it truly a demand for restitution, or something more sinister? We must find Roland Farquhar and this envelope. Only then will we know if Sylvia Rule is a victim or a villain." The day waned as Poirot and Catchpool pursued their new lead. A tip from a tailor in Mayfair identified Roland Farquhar as a frequent customer, known for his flamboyant scarves and questionable financial dealings. By evening, they stood outside a gentleman's club in St. James's, its oak doors exuding wealth and secrecy. Inside, they found Farquhar, tall, gaunt man with a hawkish nose, his red and gold scarf draped ostentatiously over his shoulder. Farquhar's demeanor was all charm, but his eyes darted like a cornered fox. Monsieur Poirot, Inspector Ketchum, he said, rising from a leather armchair. I assume this is about poor old Pandy. Tragic business. His drowning. Poirot wasted no time. Monsieur Farquhar, you were seen with Madame Sylvia Roule at the Gilded Bean. You spoke of Pandy, of a mistake to be fixed. An envelope was exchanged. What was your purpose, and what did this envelope contain? Farquhar's smile faltered, but he recovered quickly. A misunderstanding. Surely, Sylvia and I were old business associates. Pandy cheated us in a deal years ago, and in Devon, worthless in the end. We met to discuss our losses, nothing more. The envelope, just some old papers, nothing of consequence. Poirot's mustache quivered, a sign of his disbelief. Papers of no consequence do not require secret meetings, monsieur. Nor do they inspire phrases like Pandy's gone. But it's not over. Speak plainly, or I shall assume you hide a darker truth. Farquhar's composure cracked, his fingers tightening around his glass. Look, I'll admit I despised Pandy. He ruined me, left me scraping by while he lived in that grand estate. But I didn't kill him, and I didn't send those blasted letters. Sylvia was scared, said someone was trying to frame her. That's all I know. Catchpool stepped forward, his voice stern. And the envelope. If it's so innocent, produce it. Farquhar hesitated, then sighed. I burned it. It was nothing, just a draft of a complaint we never sent. I swear it. Poirot's eyes gleamed with quiet triumph. Burned, you say? How convenient. Yet the truth, Monsieur Farquhar, does not burn so easily. We shall meet again, I think. As they left the club, the London night enveloped them in fog and shadow. Catchpool shook his head. They're both lying, Poirot. Sylvia's story about a demand letter. Farquhar's claim he burned it, it's too neat, too convenient. Oui, mon ami, Poirot said, his voice low. The envelope is a phantom, a distraction. But it points to a truth. Sylvia and Farquhar are bound by more than a failed business deal. Their fear, their secrecy, suggests a conspiracy, perhaps not of murder, but of something equally damning. We must dig deeper. Back at his flat, Poirot sat at his desk, a single lamp casting a golden glow over his notes. He sketched a timeline, connecting Sylvia's meeting to Pandy's death, the letters, and now Farquhar's evasions. The phrase 3/4 nagged at him, a cryptic shadow over the case. Was it a code, a metaphor, or a literal clue? He closed his eyes, letting his little gray cells sift through the chaos. The answer was close. He could feel it, a single thread that, when pulled, would unravel the entire mystery. The chapter closed with Poirot staring at his timeline, a smile tugging at his lips. Sylvia Roule and Roland Farquhar had underestimated him, but Hercule Poirot was not a man to be outwitted. The coffeehouse conspiracy had given him a trail, and he would follow it to its end, no matter how tangled the path. Chapter 6. The scarf's owner. The fog clung to London's streets like a conspirator, veiling the city's secrets as Hercule Poirot and Edward Catchpool navigated the damp cobblestones toward the illustrious St. James's Club. The evening air carried the faint tang of coal smoke, mingling with the sharper scent of wet wool and leather from passing pedestrians. Poirot, immaculate in his polished shoes and tailored coat, adjusted his mustache with a gloved finger, his eyes gleaming with the thrill of pursuit. Catchpool, ever the practical companion, clutched a notebook, his brow furrowed as he reviewed Elsie's description of the scarf-wearing man from the coffeehouse. Mon ami. The scarf is no mere accessory, Poirot mused, his voice a melodic hum against the city's din. It is a signature, a flourish of identity. To wear such a distinctive garment in a bustling coffeehouse is to invite attention or to defy it. Catchpool nodded, though his expression betrayed skepticism. A green scarf with gold embroidery isn't exactly subtle. If this man is our letter writer, he's either brazen or careless. Or both, Poirot countered, his green eyes narrowing. The audacity of these letters for accusations of murder, each bearing my name, yet not my hand, suggests a mind that revels in the game. We shall see if this Monsieur Farquhar is such a player. The St. James's Club loomed ahead, its Georgian facade austere, yet imposing, its windows glowing with the warm light of exclusivity. A doorman in a crimson coat eyed them as they approached, his posture stiffening at Poirot's purposeful stride. Catchpool produced his Scotland Yard credentials, and the doorman's reluctance melted into a curt nod, granting them entry. Inside, the club was a cocoon of opulence, mahogany paneling, crystal chandeliers, and a low murmur of men discussing politics and profit over brandy. The air was thick with cigar smoke, curling like ghostly fingers around the leather armchairs. Poirot's nose twitched at the scent, but his focus remained sharp. A steward, summoned by the doorman, led them to a secluded corner where Roland Farquhar sat alone, a glass of amber liquid in hand. Farquhar was a man of contrasts. His tailored suit spoke of wealth, but the frayed cuffs hinted at decline. His face, angular and weathered, bore the lines of a life spent chasing fortunes and fleeing failures. The scarf, as Elsie had described, was draped over the arm of his chair of vivid green, embroidered with gold threads that caught the firelight like tiny flames. Poirot's gaze lingered on it, his mind cataloging every detail. Monsieur Roland Farquhar. Poirot's voice was polite, but carried an edge, like a velvet glove concealing a steel grip. Farquhar's eyes flicked up, wary, but not startled. "And you are Hercule Poirot, and this is Inspector Edward Catchpool of Scotland Yard. We wish to speak with you regarding a matter of some delicacy." Farquhar's lips curled into a half-smile, though it lacked warmth. "Poirot, the detective, I've read of you. What brings you to interrupt my evening?" Catchpool stepped forward, his tone brisk. "We're investigating a series of letters accusing certain individuals of murdering Barnabas Pandy. Your name has come up in connection with these letters." Farquhar's smile faded, replaced by a flicker of unease. He set his glass down, with deliberate care. "Letters, murder. I assure you, gentlemen, I know nothing of such things." Poirot tilted his head, studying Farquhar, as one might a rare specimen. "Yet you knew Monsieur Pandy, did you not? A man of considerable wealth, whose death has raised questions that demand answers." Farquhar's fingers tightened around the armrest, but his voice remained steady. "Pandy was an acquaintance, yes, a ruthless businessman, but I had no quarrel with him. His death was an accident, wasn't it? Drowned in his bath, I heard." "Perhaps," Poirot said, his tone light but probing. "But the letters suggest otherwise. And you, Monsieur Farquhar, were seen in a coffee house with Madame Sylvia Roule, who received one such letter. A curious coincidence, no?" Farquhar's eyes narrowed, and for a moment the room seemed to hold its breath. "I don't know any Sylvia Roule," he said, but the words came too quickly, like a rehearsed line delivered under pressure. Poirot's smile was small but triumphant. "Vehement. Then allow me to refresh your memory. A waitress, Elsie, observed you at the Willow Calf, discussing a scheme with a woman matching Madame Roule's description. You wore this very scarf, n'est-ce pas? A bold choice for a man who claims no connection to our inquiry." Farquhar's composure cracked, his hand drifting to the scarf, as if to shield it from scrutiny. "You're mistaken. I frequent many establishments. I speak to many people. This scarf is hardly unique." "On the contrary," Poirot said, stepping closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "It is singular, as are you, Monsieur Fedora, a financier, once celebrated, now shadowed by scandal. A man who resented Pandy's wealth, perhaps enough to wish him harm." Farquhar stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the polished floor. "This is absurd. I had no reason to harm Pandy. If you're accusing me of something, say it plainly." Catchpool intervened, his tone calming but firm. "No accusations yet, Mr. Farquhar. We're simply trying to understand your connection to Pandy and these letters. Can you account for your whereabouts on the night of his death?" "December 7th, last year." Farquhar hesitated, his gaze darting to the fire. "I was in London, at home, most likely. I live alone, so I suppose I have no alibi to offer. But I didn't kill Pandy, and I didn't write any letters." Poirot's eyes gleamed, sensing the fragility in Farquhar's denial. "Mon ami, the truth is like a fine wine, it reveals itself with time. Let us consider another matter. You knew Pandy through business. A deal that soured, perhaps. A loss that stung more deeply than you admit. Farquhar's jaw tightened, and he sank back into his chair, the fight draining from him. Yes, I knew Pandy through business. Years ago, we partnered on a venture and investment in colonial exports. It failed spectacularly. Pandy walked away, unscathed, while I lost everything. My reputation, my savings. Gone, and this left you bitter. Poirot pressed, his voice soft but relentless. Farquhar's laugh was hollow. Bitter. Of course I was bitter. Pandy had a knack for landing on his feet, while others fell. But resentment isn't murder. Mr. Poirot, perhaps not. Poirot conceded, but it is a motive. And the letters, they point to you, Monsieur Farquhar. They point to a man who knows Pandy's world, who knows his enemies. Farquhar's eyes flashed with something: anger, fear, or perhaps defiance. If you think I'm your letter writer, prove it. Search my rooms, question my associates. You'll find nothing. Poirot's smile widened. A predator sensing weakness. A generous offer. Monsieur, we shall accept it. Inspector Catchpool, perhaps you might arrange for a discreet inquiry into Monsieur Farquhar's affairs. Catchpool nodded, scribbling in his notebook. Already on it. We'll need your address, Mr. Farquhar, and any contacts who can verify your movements last December. Farquhar provided the information grudgingly, his earlier bravado replaced by a sullen resignation. As Poirot and Catchpool prepared to leave, Poirot paused, his gaze lingering on the scarf. One last thing, monsieur. Where did you acquire this scarf? It is, as you say, not unique, yet it is memorable. Farquhar's hand twitched toward the scarf again, a reflex he couldn't suppress. A gift, he said curtly, from a friend. Long ago, I don't recall the details. Bean, sir, Poirot said, his tone dripping with polite disbelief. We shall speak again, Monsieur Farquhar. Until then, I advise you to guard your secrets as closely as you guard that scarf. Outside, the fog had thickened, swallowing the street lamps in a ghostly haze. Catchpool adjusted his coat, glancing at Poirot. Do you think he's our man? He's cagey, I'll give you that, but he didn't confess to anything. Poirot's eyes twinkled in the dim light. Confession is not always immediate, Ami Farquhar is a man of layers. Like an onion, each one peeled reveals a sharper scent. His alibi is weak, his resentment strong, and his scarf. It is a thread we must follow. They walked in silence for a moment, the city's pulse thrumming around them. Catchpool broke the quiet. What's next, then? We've got his address. I can have a constable search his rooms tomorrow. But we must also look beyond. The man himself, Poirot said. The scarf, the coffee house, the scheme, these are pieces of a larger puzzle. We must learn more of Pandy's world, his enemies, his allies. Farquhar is but one player in this drama. As they reached a corner, a figure emerged from the fog, a young woman, her face half hidden by a hooded cloak. She hesitated, then approached Poirot, her voice low and urgent. Mr. Oh, I heard you were asking about Roland Farquhar. I know something you might want to hear. Poirot's eyebrows rose, his curiosity piqued. Mademoiselle, you have my attention. Speak, and let us see what light you shed on this mystery. The woman glanced nervously over her shoulder, then leaned closer. My name's Clara. I used to work for Mr. Pandy as a typist. I saw Farquhar at the estate, months before Pandy died. He was angry, shouting about money owed, and he wasn't alone. There was another man, someone I didn't recognize. They were talking about a plan, something about 3/4. I didn't understand it, but it sounded wrong. Catchpool's pen hovered over his notebook. Can you describe this other man? Clara shook her head. It was dark, and I was in a hurry. But he had a strange voice, gravelly, like he'd smoked too many cigars. I thought you should. No. Poirot's mind raced. The phrase 3/4 echoing from Vincent Lobb's cryptic warning. Merci, Mademoiselle Clara. Your information is most valuable. If you recall anything more, you must find me at once. Clara nodded, then vanished into the fog as quickly as she'd appeared. Catchpool exhaled, his breath visible in the chill air. 3/4 again. What the devil does it mean? It is a cipher, mon ami Poirot said, his voice alight with purpose. A code within the mystery. Farquhar is not alone in this game, and we must find this gravel-voiced stranger. Come, let us return to my flat. The little gray cells. They demand a quiet place to work. Back at Poirot's impeccably ordered flat, the fire crackled as he poured 2 glasses of syrup de cassis, offering one to Catchpool. The room, with its polished furniture and neatly arranged books, was a sanctuary of order in a chaotic world. Poirot paced, his hands clasped behind his back, his mind weaving connections. Farquhar's resentment is genuine, he began, but his denial of Sylvia Rule is not. Elsie's testimony places them together, plotting. And now, Clara's revelation, a second man, a plan, the 3/4. It suggests a conspiracy, Nan. But to what end? Catchpool sipped his drink, frowning. If Farquhar and this other man planned Pandy's death, why send the letters? Why draw attention to themselves? Precisement, Poirot said, stopping mid-stride. The letters are not a confession, but a distraction. They accuse for people Sylvia, John, Hugo, Annabelle, but none may be the true killer. The letter writer wishes to muddy the waters, to point us toward false suspects, while the real culprit hides. Catchpool leaned forward, intrigued. So Farquhar could be a pawn, not the mastermind. Or both, Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. A man who lost everything to Pandy might be persuaded to act, but he may not act alone. We must investigate his past, his failed venture with Pandy, his associates, his debts. And this scarf, it is more than a clue. It is a symbol, perhaps of loyalty or betrayal. The night deepened, and Poirot's flat became a crucible of thought. He sketched a timeline on a sheet of paper, marking Pandy's death, the letter's delivery, and Farquhar's coffeehouse meeting. Each dot was a step closer to the truth, but the path remained obscured. The next morning, Catchpool returned with news. A constable's search of Farquhar's rooms had yielded a few unpaid bills, a photograph of a younger Farquhar with an unidentified woman, and a cryptic note tucked inside a book. 3/4 complete. One remains. The handwriting matched the accusatory letters. Poirot's pulse quickened. Mon Dieu, the plot thickens. This note confirms our suspicions. Farquhar is entangled, but he is not the weaver of this web. We must find the woman in the photograph, and this one who remains. As they planned their next move, a telegram arrived. Its contents brief but electrifying. Farquhar seen leaving London. Destination unknown. Urgent. Poirot's smile was grim but determined. Then we follow. Mon ami, the scarf's owner, may run, but Hercule Poirot does not lose the scent. To the station, and let us see where this trail leads. The chapter closed with Poirot and Catchpool boarding a train, the whistle's shrill cry cutting through the morning mist. Farquhar's flight was a desperate act, but Poirot's resolve was unshakable. The mystery of the 3/4 was unraveling, and with each step, the little gray cells drew closer to the heart of the conspiracy. Chapter 7. The Drowned Man's Secret. Poirot adjusted his impeccable mustache, the bristles aligning as precisely as his thoughts, as he stood outside the heavy oak doors of the Pandy estate. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the gravel drive, painting the Georgian manor in hues of amber and melancholy. Beside him, Inspector Edward Catchpool shuffled his feet, his notebook clutched like a talisman against the enigma they faced. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and fading roses, a reminder of the estate's grandeur now tinged with decay. Poirot's sharp eyes scanned the windows, half expecting a curtain to twitch, but the house remained silent, guarding its secrets. Mon ami, Poirot said, his voice a measured cadence. The heart of this mystery beats within these walls. Annabelle Treadway holds a key, whether she knows it or not. We must tread carefully, for the truth is a delicate creature, easily startled. Catchpool nodded, his brow furrowed. She's nervous as a cat. Poirot, that business with the letters Sylvia Rule, John McCrodden, Hugo Coral, and now Annabelle herself. There's a pattern, but it's like chasing shadows. Why accuse 4 people of a murder that was ruled an accident? Poirot's lips curled into a faint smile, his green eyes glinting with the thrill of the puzzle. Shadows, Catchpool, are cast by something real. These letters are not mere mischief. They are a map, drawn by a hand that wishes to guide us or mislead us. Come, let us see what Mademoiselle Annabelle reveals. They knocked, and the door creaked open, revealing a young maid with wide, anxious eyes. "Miss Annabelle's in the library, sir," she whispered, as if the walls themselves might eavesdrop. "She's been there all morning, ever since your telegram arrived." The library was a cavern of books and secrets, its high shelves lined with leather-bound tomes that smelled of age and wax. Annabelle Treadway sat by a tall window, her thin frame bathed in the soft glow of a leaden sky. Her hands, clasped tightly in her lap, trembled slightly as she rose to greet them. Her pale face, framed by a cascade of dark hair, bore the weight of unspoken fears. "Monsieur Poirot, Inspector Catchpool," she said, her voice a fragile thread. "I've been expecting you. This business with the letters, it's dreadful. I can't sleep, wondering who could be so cruel." Poirot inclined his head, his demeanor as soothing as a balm. "Mademoiselle, cruelty often masks a deeper purpose. Tell me, what do you know of your grandfather's death?" "The letters claim murder, yet the coroner declared it an accident. A drowning in his bath, was it not?" Annabelle's eyes darted to the floor, then back to Poirot. "Yes, that's what they said. Grandfather was old, frail. He slipped, they think, and the water, ... She trailed off, her fingers twisting a handkerchief. "But those letters, they accuse me. I loved him." "I would never calm yourself, Mademoiselle," Poirot interjected gently. "I do not accuse you, but I must know all. Your grandfather, Barnabas Pandy, was he a man of secrets? Did he speak of anything unusual before his death?" Annabelle hesitated, her gaze flickering toward a mahogany desk in the corner. "He was preoccupied in his final weeks. He spent hours in his study, writing, muttering about something he called fractional fatalities. I thought it was just his mind wandering. He was fond of puzzles. You see, mathematical ones, mostly. But he wouldn't explain it to me. He said it was too dangerous." Poirot's eyes narrowed, his mind seizing the phrase like a hound on a scent. Fractional fatalities, a curious term. Did he leave any notes, any writings that might illuminate this theory? Annabelle bit her lip, then crossed to the desk. She opened a drawer, her movements slow, as if reluctant to disturb its contents. "After he died, I found this," she said, producing a small, leather-bound notebook. Its pages were yellowed, the ink faded but legible. "I didn't know what to make of it. It's full of numbers, diagrams, and ... names." Poirot took the notebook with the reverence of an archaeologist unearthing a relic. He opened it, his fingers tracing the cramped, meticulous handwriting of Barnabas Pandy. The pages were a labyrinth of equations, interspersed with cryptic phrases. 3/4 must be reckoned and the sum of their sins. Most startling was a list on the final page. Sylvia Rule, John McCrodden, Hugo Davaro, and Annabelle Treadway, each name underlined with a flourish. "Mon Dieu," Poirot murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "This is no mere coincidence. Your grandfather knew something, mademoiselle, something that connects the 4 of you. And this 3/4, it is the key to the letters, I am certain." Catchpool peered over Poirot's shoulder, his practical mind grappling with the abstract. "But what does it mean? Fractional fatalities. It sounds like something out of a mathematician's fever dream." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Perhaps it is, Catchpool, or perhaps it is a code, a way to describe a crime that is not whole, but divided. A death in parts, shared among many. We must understand Pandy's mind to unravel it." Annabelle sank into a chair, her face ashen. "There's more," she said, her voice trembling. "The night he died, I heard him arguing with someone in his study. I couldn't make out the words, but his voice was angry, almost afraid. I thought it was a dream, but now ... Poirot's gaze softened, but his mind raced. "You did not See this person? No hint of their identity. She shook her head. The door was closed. I was in the hall, half asleep. By morning, he was gone. They found him in the bath, and I thought, I thought it was my fault for not checking on him. Poirot placed a reassuring hand on her arm. You must not blame yourself, mademoiselle. The fault lies with the one who wove this web. But tell me, where is this study? I must see it. Annabel led them through a maze of corridors, the house creaking under their steps like a living thing. The study was a smaller room, its walls lined with maps and charts, a testament to Pandy's eclectic mind. A large desk dominated the space, its surface cluttered with papers, a quill, and an inkpot. Poirot's eyes swept the room, noting a faint scratch on the floor near a bookcase. Catchpool, he said, pointing. Observe this mark. It suggests movement, perhaps of the bookcase itself. A hidden compartment. Pater, Catchpool, ever the skeptic, tugged at the bookcase. It groaned, then swung outward, revealing a narrow recess. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded and sealed with wax. Poirot broke the seal, his heart quickening as he read the contents aloud. To whom it concerns, the 3/4 are not what they seem. They are bound by a debt unpaid, a sin unconfessed. If I die, it is because I saw too much. Seek the one who hides in plain sight. The words hung in the air, heavy with portent. Annabel gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. He knew he was in danger, she whispered. But who? Who could he mean? Poirot folded the paper, tucking it into his pocket. That, mademoiselle, is what we shall discover. This note confirms that Barnabas Pandy's death was no accident. It was a murder, staged to appear otherwise, and the letters are a taunt, a challenge to uncover the truth. Catchpool frowned, his mind wrestling with the implications. But why list those 4 names? Sylvia, John, Hugo, and Annabel. They're all so different. A businesswoman, a financier, a schoolmaster, and his granddaughter. What's the connection? Poirot's eyes gleamed. That is the heart of it, Catchpool. The connection is the motive, and the motive is hidden in this fractional fatalities. I suspect Pandy was unraveling a conspiracy, one that threatened someone powerful. The letters were sent to confuse us, to make us chase phantoms. But Hercule Poirot does not chase phantoms. He finds the truth. The room fell silent, the weight of Poirot's words settling like dust. Annabel's eyes were wide, her fear palpable. What do we do now? She asked. Poirot straightened, his posture as resolute as his resolve. We gather them all, Sylvia, John, Hugo, and you, mademoiselle. A confrontation, where the truth will be forced into the light. I shall arrange it at my flat in London. There, we shall see who flinches, who betrays themselves. The game, as they say, is afoot. As they left the study, Poirot's mind was a whirlwind of possibilities. The phrase fractional fatalities danced in his thoughts, a riddle wrapped in a mystery. Was it a literal fraction, a mathematical clue? Or was it metaphorical, a division of guilt among the 4? The note's warning, the one who hides in plain sight, suggested a mastermind, someone close to Pandy, perhaps even within the family. Outside, the sky had darkened, a storm brewing on the horizon. Catchpool glanced at Poirot, his expression a mix of admiration and exasperation. You really think you can solve this, don't you? With nothing but a notebook and a cryptic note. Poirot chuckled, a sound as warm as it was confident. My dear Catchpool, it is not the evidence alone that solves the crime. It is the order, the method, the little gray cells. They see what others miss. And they tell me this. Barnabas Pandy was murdered because he knew too much, and someone fears we will know it too. They climbed into their car, the engine rumbling to life as the first raindrops fell. Poirot's mind was already planning the gathering, envisioning the 4 suspects seated before him, their secrets laid bare. He pictured Sylvia Rule's defiant glare, John McCrodden's nervous fidgeting, Hugo Dockerill's evasive glances, and Annabel's quiet terror. One of them, he was certain, held the key to the truth, or perhaps all of them did. In fragments, like pieces of a shattered mirror, as the car wound through the countryside, Poirot's thoughts drifted to the notebook's list. Why, those four: Sylvia, with her failed business deal; John, with his grudge; Hugo, with his fear of a shadowy figure; and Annabel, with her loyalty to her grandfather. The answer lay in their pasts, in the threads that bound them to Pandy. The 3/4 could mean 3 of the 4 were guilty, or perhaps 3 parts of a larger scheme. Or was it a reference to time, to money, to a will? Fingers tapped a rhythm on his knee, a habit when his mind was at its most active. He recalled a conversation with Vincent Lobb, the solicitor, about the will's changes. Annabel had been favored, but was there more to it? Had Pandy uncovered a betrayal, a theft, a lie that cost him his life? The jade figurine, mentioned by the maid, lingered in Poirot's thoughts. Was it a symbol, a motive, or a red herring? The car slowed as they approached London, the city's lights a beacon in the gathering dusk. Poirot turned to Catchpool, his voice firm. "Tomorrow, we send the invitations. Sylvia, John, Hugo, and Annabel must come to my flat. We shall recreate the night of Pandy's death, not in body, but in spirit. Their reactions will tell us much." Catchpool nodded, though his eyes betrayed his doubts. "And if they don't come, they will come," Poirot said with certainty. "Curiosity, fear, or guilt will bring them. And when they do, Hercule Poirot will be ready." The chapter drew to a close as the car pulled up to Poirot's flat, the rain now a steady drumbeat against the windows. Inside, Poirot lit a lamp, its glow casting a warm circle in the darkness. He sat at his desk, the notebook open before him, and began to write, his pen moving with the precision of a surgeon. The stage was set, the players chosen. The mystery of the 3/4 was no longer a shadow, it was a puzzle, and Hercule Poirot was determined to solve it. Chapter 8. The Gathering of Suspects. The late afternoon sun cast long, golden fingers through the tall windows of Hercule Poirot's London flat, bathing the room in a warm, deceptive glow. The air was thick with anticipation, the kind that hums in the silence before a storm. Poirot, immaculate in his pinstriped suit, stood at the center of his meticulously arranged parlor, his mustache twitching as he surveyed the scene. 4 chairs, precisely positioned in a semicircle, awaited their occupants: Sylvia Rule, John McCraden, Hugo Dockerel, and Annabel Treadway. Each had received a letter accusing them of murdering Barnabas Pandy, a man whose death, officially deemed accidental, now pulsed with sinister possibility. Poirot's friend, Inspector Edward Catchpool of Scotland Yard, leaned against the fireplace mantel, his broad shoulders tense, his notebook clutched like a lifeline. He had grumbled about Poirot's theatrical tendencies, but even he couldn't deny the electric charge of this moment. The suspects were due any minute, and the room polished to a gleam, with its mahogany table adorned only by a crystal decanter of water and 5 glasses, felt like a stage set for a revelation. The first to arrive was Sylvia Rule, her auburn hair swept into an elegant chignon, her emerald dress clinging to her frame as if to assert her confidence. Yet her eyes betrayed her, darting, restless, like a fox sensing a trap. She clutched a small velvet purse, her knuckles white. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice crisp but edged with unease. "I trust this gathering will clarify why my name has been dragged into this absurdity." "Madame Rule," Poirot replied, his tone smooth as polished marble. "The truth, it has a way of emerging when the right questions are asked. Please, take a seat." Next came John McCraden, his heavy footsteps announcing him. Before he appeared, a burly man with a face weathered by years of financial gambles gone awry. He wore a tweed suit that seemed to strain against his frustration. "This better not be a waste of my time, Poirot," he growled, dropping into a chair with a thud. "I've got better things to do than play games over some dead man I barely knew." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Monsieur McCraden, the game, as you call it, is one of truth. And truth, it is never a waste of time." Hugo Dockerel arrived moments later, his thin frame almost swallowed by a poorly tailored coat. The schoolmaster's nervous energy was palpable. His fingers fidgeted with his spectacles, and his gaze flitted to the door as if expecting an ambush. I don't understand why I'm here, he stammered. I told you everything about that wretched letter. Patience, Monsieur Poirot said, gesturing to a chair. All will become clear. Finally, Annabel Treadway entered, her pale face framed by a somber gray dress. Her hands trembled slightly as she smoothed her skirt, and her eyes, large, haunted, avoided. Meeting Poirot's Monsieur Poirot, she whispered, I hope this ends soon. I can't bear the thought of what these letters imply. Poirot inclined his head, his expression unreadable. Mademoiselle Treadway, the end, it is near. But first, we must face the shadows. With all four seated, the room seemed to shrink, the air growing denser with unspoken accusations. Catchpool cleared his throat, breaking the silence. Right, then, let's get on with it. Monsieur Poirot has some questions for you all. Poirot stepped forward, his small stature somehow commanding the space. Mies Amos, he began, his voice low yet resonant. You are here because each of you received a letter, signed with my name, accusing you of the murder of Barnabas Pandy. I did not write these letters. This, you know. But someone wished to unsettle you, to stir the waters of your conscience. Why? That is the question we must answer. Sylvia's lips tightened. This is ridiculous. I never met Pandy. Why would I kill a stranger? Indeed, Madame Poirot said, his eyes narrowing. Yet the letter writer chose you. Why? Let us consider. He paced slowly, his polished shoes clicking on the hardwood floor. You, Madame Rule, are a woman of ambition. A businesswoman, yes. Perhaps you crossed paths with Pandy in ways you have not yet disclosed. Sylvia's cheeks flushed. I told you, I didn't know him. Poirot raised a hand, silencing her. And you, Monsieur Macrodden, he continued, turning to John. Your investments, they have not always been. Fortunate Pandy was a wealthy man. Did you seek his aid, perhaps, and were refused? John's jaw clenched. I don't beg, he spat, and I don't murder. Poirot's gaze shifted to Hugo. Monsieur Docqueril, you teach the young minds, yet your nerves betray you. You spoke of a figure near Pandy's estate, a shadow, perhaps, of guilt. Hugo's spectacles slipped down his nose. I saw someone, yes, but I didn't, I wouldn't, and Mademoiselle Treadway, Poirot said softly, his tone almost tender as he faced Annabel. You are the granddaughter of Barnabas Pandy. You lived in his home, yet you claim his death was an accident. But your eyes, they tell a different story. Annabel's hands twisted in her lap. I loved my grandfather, she murmured. I would never harm him. Poirot stopped pacing, clasping his hands behind his back. 4 letters for accusations. Yet only one truth. Let us explore Mies Amos, the connections between you. The room fell silent, the weight of Poirot's words settling like dust. Catchpool scribbled in his notebook, his pen scratching audibly. Sylvia broke the quiet, her voice sharp. If you're suggesting we're all in some sort of conspiracy, you're mistaken. I don't even know these people. Do you not? Poirot's mustache twitched. Let us test this claim. Madame Rule, you spoke of a business venture in London some years ago, a venture that failed spectacularly. A loan, perhaps, from a wealthy man. Sylvia's eyes widened, but she recovered quickly. I've had many ventures. None involved Pandy. Poirot turned to John. And you, Monsieur Macrodden, you too sought funds for an investment, a shipping venture, was it not? One that collapsed, leaving debts unpaid. John's face darkened. How do you know about that? Poirot smiled, faintly. The little gray cells, they do not rest. And you, Monsieur Docqueril, you taught at a school near Pandy's estate. Yes, a school that received a generous donation from Pandy, only to have it withdrawn after an incident. Hugo paled. That was years ago. I had nothing to do with enough. Annabel's voice, usually soft, cut through the room like a blade. She stood, trembling. Stop tormenting us. I don't know why these letters were sent, but I didn't kill my grandfather. None of us did. Poirot's eyes softened, but only for a moment. Mademoiselle, your distress, it is genuine. But the truth, it hides behind such emotions. Let us speak of the night Barnabas Pandy died. The room seemed to hold its breath. Catchpool glanced at Poirot, sensing the shift in the air. Poirot continued, his voice steady. Pandy drowned in his bath. An accident, they say. Yet the letters suggest otherwise. Madame Rule, where were you that night? Sylvia straightened. At home, in London, alone. Alone, Poirot repeated, his tone laced with skepticism. And you, Monsieur Macrodin? John shrugged. In a pub. The Red Lion, I think, asked the barkeep. Poirot nodded, then turned to Hugo. And you, Monsieur Dockeril? Hugo hesitated, his fingers twisting. I was marking papers at my lodgings. And you, Mademoiselle Treadway? Poirot's gaze was piercing now, unyielding. Annabelle's voice was barely a whisper. I was at the estate, in my room. I heard nothing. Poirot clasped his hands, his eyes gleaming with purpose. For alibis, all unverified. Convenient, is it not? But there is more. Madame Rule, you met with Pandy 3 weeks before his death. A meeting you did not mention. Sylvia's composure cracked. How it was nothing. A discussion about a loan. Yes, but it went nowhere. He refused me. Poirot's eyebrow arched. And you, Monsieur Macrodin, you visited Pandy's solicitor, Vincent Lobb, to inquire about his investments. A week before his death. John's fists clenched. So what? I was looking for opportunities. Doesn't mean I killed him. And Monsieur Dockeril, Poirot continued. You were seen near the Pandy estate the night of his death, despite claiming to be at your lodgings. Hugo gasped. That's a lie. Who told you that? Poirot ignored the outburst, turning to Annabelle. And you, mademoiselle, you were not in your room all night. A maid saw you near the bathroom, moments before Pandy was found. Annabelle's face crumpled. I went to check on him. He was already gone. The room erupted in protests. Sylvia stood, pointing at Annabelle. She's lying. She's the one who lived with him. John snarled. You're all hiding something. I didn't touch the old man. Hugo buried his face in his hands, muttering, this is a nightmare. Catchpool banged his fist on the mantel, silencing them. Enough. Let Poirot finish. Poirot's voice was calm, almost soothing. Mise Amos, the truth, it is like a mosaic. Each piece your lies, your secrets forms a picture. And I, Hercule Poirot, see it clearly now. He paused, letting the tension build. The letters were not sent to accuse you of murder. They were sent to expose your guilt, not of murder, perhaps, but of something else. Sylvia's eyes narrowed. What are you implying? Poirot stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. Each of you had a reason to resent Barnabas Pandy. Madame Rule, your failed loan left you humiliated. Monsieur Macrodin, your lost investment fueled your anger. Monsieur Dockeril, the withdrawal of Pandy's donation cost you your reputation. And Mademoiselle Treadway, your grandfather's will favored you, but at what cost to your sister, Lenore? Annabelle's breath hitched. Leave Lenore out of this. Poirot's eyes gleamed. I cannot. For the truth, it involves her too. The letters, they were a distraction. Yes, to keep us from the real crime. But what is that crime? That Mise Amos, we shall discover. He turned to Catchpool. Inspector, I propose a reenactment. We shall return to the Pandy estate and recreate the night of his death. There, the truth will reveal itself. The suspects exchanged uneasy glances, their faces a tableau of fear, anger, and guilt. Sylvia's lips parted, but no words came. John's scowl deepened. Hugo's shoulders slumped, and Annabelle's eyes filled with tears. Catchpool nodded, his voice grim. I'll arrange it. Tomorrow night. Then Poirot inclined his head. Tomorrow night, the mosaic will be complete. As the suspects filed out, their footsteps heavy with dread, Poirot stood by the window, watching the fading light. The human heart, Catchpool, he murmured, it is a labyrinth, but I, Hercule Poirot, shall find the way. The room fell silent, the golden light, now a mere ember. The stage was set, and the truth elusive, cunning waited in the shadows. Chapter 9. The night in question, the Pandy estate loomed under a sky, bruised with twilight. its gabled roofs cutting jagged silhouettes against the fading light. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, as if the estate itself exhaled secrets long buried. Hercule Poirot, his impeccable mustache twitching with anticipation, stood at the threshold of the grand front door, his Scotland Yard companion, Inspector Edward Catchpool, at his side. The reenactment of Barnabas Pandy's final night was about to begin, and Poirot's little gray cells thrummed with the promise of revelation. Inside, the four recipients of the accusatory letters, Sylvia Rule, John McCraden, Hugo and Annabel Treadway, gathered in the cavernous drawing-room, their faces, illuminated by the flickering glow of a chandelier, betrayed a spectrum of emotions. Sylvia's sharp indignation, John's brooding resentment, Hugo's nervous fidgeting, and Annabel's haunted pallor. The room, with its heavy velvet drapes and polished mahogany, seemed to close in around them, a silent witness to the drama about to unfold. Poirot's eyes swept over the group, noting every detail, the way Sylvia's fingers clutched her handbag, the faint tremor in Hugo's hands, the way Annabel's gaze darted toward the door, as if expecting an intruder. "Miss Amos," he began, his voice smooth as polished oak, "tonight we shall reconstruct the night Monsieur Pandy met his end. It is in the details of that night that the truth hides, like a shadow in a storm. I ask for your cooperation, but I warn you, the truth is a relentless hunter." Catchpool, ever the practical foil to Poirot's theatrics, adjusted his tie and cleared his throat. "Right then. We'll start with the timeline. Pandy was found drowned in his bath at approximately 10 o'clock in the evening. The coroner ruled it an accident, but Poirot believes otherwise. We'll recreate the sequence of events, and you'll each play your part, as it was that night or as you claim it was." Sylvia Rule, her auburn hair pinned tightly, scoffed. "This is absurd, Inspector. I was nowhere near this dreadful place when Mr. Pandy died. I told you, I hadn't seen him in years, not since that wretched business deal." Poirot raised a hand, his eyes gleaming. "Madame Rule, your protestations are noted, but tonight, we are not here to argue innocence. We are here to observe. Monsieur Catchpool, if you please, take the role of Monsieur Pandy. We shall begin in the bathroom." The group moved through the dimly lit corridors of the estate, their footsteps echoing on the marble floors. The bathroom, located on the second floor, was a relic of opulence, white tiles gleaming under the soft light of a single bulb, a claw-footed tub dominating the space. The overflow drain, a small brass grate near the tub's rim, caught Poirot's eye. He knelt beside it, his gloved fingers tracing its edge with the precision of a watchmaker. "Observe, Miss Amos," Poirot said, his voice low but commanding, "the overflow mechanism. It is designed to prevent the tub from spilling over. Not yet Monsieur Pandy was found submerged, the water undisturbed. How curious, is it not, that a man drowns in a bath that should not overflow?" Hugo Dockerel, his round face flushed, stammered, "But surely it was just an accident." The coroner said he slipped, hit his head. Poirot's gaze pinned Hugo like a butterfly to a board. "And yet, Monsieur Dockerel, you received a letter accusing you of murder. A letter in my name, which I did not write. Why you, I wonder? What connection do you have to this tragedy?" Hugo's eyes darted to Annabel, who stood near the door, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. "I taught at the school where Annabel's nephew studied. That's all. I barely knew Mr. Pandy." Annabel's voice, soft and trembling, broke the silence. "Hugo's right. He was kind to Timothy, my nephew. That's the only link." Poirot's mustache twitched. "Kindness, Mademoiselle Treadway, can mask many motives. Let us proceed." Catchpool, with a sigh of resignation, stepped into the tub, fully clothed. "I feel ridiculous," he muttered, lowering himself into the empty basin. "What am I supposed to do now?" "Imagine, Inspector, that you are Monsieur Pandy," Poirot instructed. "You are preparing for your bath. The water is filling. The room is quiet. What happens next?" Catchpool leaned back, mimicking a relaxed pose, then frowned. "If I slipped and hit my head, As the coroner suggested, I'd fall forward, not backward. The tub's edge is too high for an accidental submersion. Poirot clapped his hands, a sharp sound that made Sylvia flinch. Precisement. The mechanics of the accident do not align. Let us test the overflow. He turned to a nearby pitcher, filled with water from a basin, and poured it into the tub. The water rose, lapping at the overflow drain butt. Instead of draining, it began to pool. Mon Dieu, Poirot exclaimed, his eyes alight. The drain is obstructed. A deliberate act, perhaps. Someone wished the tub to overflow, or to ensure Monsieur Pandy could not escape the water. John McCracken, his dark eyes narrowing, stepped forward. Are you suggesting one of us tampered with it? That's preposterous. I was in London that night, nowhere near this place. And yet, Monsieur McCracken, Poirot said, his voice velvet over steel. You received a letter accusing you of murder. Why? I ask. What grudge did you bear, Monsieur Pandy? John's jaw tightened. I told you, it was a failed investment. He cheated me out of thousands, but I didn't kill him. Poirot turned to Annabel, whose face had grown paler. Mademoiselle Treadway, you were in the house that night. Tell me, what did you see? Annabel's lips trembled. I heard the water running. I thought grandfather was just taking his bath, as he always did. I was in my room, reading. I didn't check on him until it was too late. Her hesitation, the way her eyes flickered to the floor, did not escape. Poirot, you pause, mademoiselle. There is something you do not say. What is it? Annabel shook her head, tears welling. I can't be sure. I thought I heard voices earlier that evening, outside his room. But it could have been the servants, or my imagination. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Voices, you say, and yet you did not investigate. A curious choice for a granddaughter so devoted. Sylvia's voice cut through the tension. This is nonsense. You're twisting everything, Poirot. Those letters were a prank, nothing more. Why are we even here? Poirot turned to her, his expression unreadable. A prank, Madame Rule. 4 letters, each accusing a specific person of murder, signed in my name. Nan, this is no jest. This is a calculated move, designed to unsettle, to provoke, and Poirot, will uncover the mind behind it. The group moved back to the drawing room, the air now heavy with suspicion. Poirot paced before the fireplace, his hands clasped behind his back. Let us consider the facts. Monsieur Pandy dies in a bath that should not overflow, yet does. 4 letters are sent, accusing 4 individuals, each with a connection to Pandy, however tenuous. And now, we have evidence of tampering. Someone in this house, on that night, ensured Pandy's death was no accident. Hugo mopped his brow with a handkerchief. But who, and why? Pandy was old, frail. What reason could anyone have? Poirot stopped pacing, his eyes fixed on Annabel. Mademoiselle Treadway, you mentioned voices. Can you describe them? A man's voice, a woman's. Annabel swallowed hard. I think it was a man's voice, low, urgent, but I couldn't make out the words. It was just before dinner, around 7. Poirot nodded, his mind racing. And the servants, where were they? The maid, Elsie, was in the kitchen, Annabel said. The butler, Mr. Grayson, was preparing the dining room. I don't know where the others were. Catchpool, who had been scribbling notes, looked up. We'll need to question the staff again. If someone was in the house, they might have seen something. Poirot agreed, but his attention remained on Annabel. Her hesitation, her fear was more than grief. She was hiding something, and Poirot was determined to uncover it. As the group dispersed for the evening, Poirot lingered in the bathroom, examining the overflow drain once more. He produced a small tool from his poquita slender proband, carefully worked it into the grate. After a moment, he extracted a small, wadded piece of cloth, soaked and discolored. He held it up to the light, his eyes narrowing. Interesting, he murmured. A deliberate obstruction. Not an accident, but a plan. Catchpool joined him, peering at the cloth. What is it? Part of a towel. Nan, Inspector. It is silk, a fragment, perhaps, from a scarf or a handkerchief. We must have it analyzed. But more importantly, we must ask ourselves, who had access to this bathroom on that night? The next morning, Poirot and Catchpool gathered the household staff in the kitchen. Elsie, the quirky waitress from the coffee house, who also served at the Pandy estate, was wiping her hands on her apron, her eyes wide with curiosity. Mr. Grayson, the butler, stood stiffly, his expression unreadable. The other servants, a cook and a housemaid, hovered nervously. Ms. Amos, Poirot began. On the night Monsieur Pandy died, someone entered his bathroom and tampered with the overflow drain. A piece of silk was used to block it. Tell me, did any of you see anything unusual that evening? Elsie spoke first, her voice bright but cautious. I was in the kitchen most of the night, sir. I didn't see anyone near the master's room, but, well, I did hear Miss Annabel pacing in the hall around 7. She seemed awfully upset. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Pacing, you say? And what else? Grayson cleared his throat. I was in the dining room, as Miss Annabel said. But I did notice Mr. Pandy's door was ajar when I passed by earlier. I thought nothing of it at the time. Poirot's mustache twitched. An open door, a man's voice, a pacing granddaughter. The pieces, they begin to form a picture. Catchpool frowned. But what does it mean, Poirot? If Annabel heard voices, why didn't she tell anyone? And why tamper with the drain? Poirot did not answer immediately. Instead, he turned to Elsie. Mademoiselle, you have a keen eye for detail. Nan, you mentioned a scarf in the coffee house, worn by a man with Madame Rule. Could such a scarf be made of silk? Elsie's eyes widened. Oh, yes, sir. It was a fancy thing, all shiny and red. Could have been silk. Sure enough, Poirot nodded, his mind racing. The scarf, the silk, the voices, it was all connected, but the motive remained elusive. He turned to Catchpool. We must speak to Mademoiselle Treadway again. Her hesitation, her fear, it is the key. They found Annabel in the garden, sitting on a stone bench beneath a willow tree. Her hands were folded in her lap, but her fingers twisted nervously. Poirot approached with a gentle smile, though his eyes were sharp. Mademoiselle, he said softly, you have been most forthcoming, but there is something you hold back. The voices you heard, the pacing, Elsie observed. What did you see that night? Annabel's eyes filled with tears. I didn't want to believe it. I thought I was mistaken. But I saw someone leaving grandfather's room. A man, tall, with a red scarf. I didn't know him, but he looked angry. I was afraid to confront him. Poirot's heart quickened. A red scarf, you say? And you did not tell the police? I was scared, Annabel cried. I thought it was my fault, that I should have stopped him, but by the time I checked on grandfather, he was already gone. Poirot placed a hand on her shoulder, his voice gentle but firm. You have done well to tell me, mademoiselle. This man, he is the key, and I, Hercule Poirot, will find him. As they left the garden, Catchpool whispered, the scarf again. It's got to be Farquhar, the financier from the gentleman's club. But why would he kill Pandy? Poirot's eyes gleamed. That, Inspector, is what we shall discover. The night in question has spoken, and it tells us of murder. One of these for Sylvia, John Hugo, or Annabel knows more than they admit. And I suspect Mademoiselle Treadway has just given us the thread to unravel this tapestry of deceit. The chapter closed with Poirot standing at the estate's gate, the wind tugging at his coat. The evidence of tampering confirmed Pandy's death as murder, and Annabel's revelation pointed to a mysterious figure with a red scarf. The puzzle was far from solved, but Poirot's resolve was unshakable. The truth, he knew, was within reach, waiting for his little gray cells to seize it. Chapter 10. The hidden air. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the cobblestone streets of London, its golden rays slicing through the haze of coal smoke that clung to the city like a persistent ghost. Hercule Poirot, impeccably dressed, in his tailored overcoat and polished shoes, strode purposefully alongside Inspector Edward Catchpool, whose lanky frame seemed perpetually at odds with the brisk pace Poirot set. The air carried the sharp tang of autumn leaves and the distant clatter of horse-drawn carriages. But Poirot's mind was far from the sensory bustle. His little gray cells hummed with the puzzle of Barnabas Pandy's death and the 4 accusatory letters that bore his forged signature. The revelation of Timothy, Pandy's rumored illegitimate son, had ignited a spark in Poirot's investigation. Annabel Treadway's reluctant admission at the gloomy Pandy estate had been a turning point. Timothy, long vanished from the family's orbit, had resurfaced before Pandy's drowning, demanding a share of the inheritance. The notion of this hidden heir, cloaked in mystery and resentment, had set Poirot's instincts ablaze. Now, as he and Catchpool navigated the labyrinthine streets toward a lead provided by a local innkeeper, whispered rumor of a man matching Timothy's description at a seedy boarding house in Whitechapel. Poirot felt the familiar thrill of the chase. Mon ami, Poirot said, his voice crisp despite the chill. This Timothy, he is the shadow in the corner of the painting. Nan, the figure we did not see until the light was cast. Just so, if he is indeed the author of these letters, or even the murderer of Monsieur Pandy, we must be prepared for a man who moves with cunning. Catchpool, adjusting his scarf against the wind, nodded. If he's been lurking all these years, nursing a grudge, he's had time to plan. But why now? Why stir up trouble after Pandy's death? Poirot's mustache twitched, a sign of his mind at work. That, Catchpool, is the question. The timing, it is never an accident. Perhaps Pandy's death was the spark. Or perhaps Timothy seeks to unsettle those who inherited what he believes is his. The letters Sylvia, John, Hugo, Annabel. They are not random. They are a message. But to whom? The duo turned onto a narrow street, where the buildings leaned inward as if conspiring. The innkeeper's tip had been vague but promising. A man, gaunt and sharp-eyed, had been seen at the Rose and Thorn, a boarding house known for sheltering those who preferred to remain unnoticed. Poirot's gloved hand tightened on his cane as they approached the weathered facade, its paint peeling like old skin. A faded sign creaked above the door, and the windows glowed faintly with the flicker of gas lamps. Inside, the air was thick, with the scent of stale tobacco and unwashed linens. The lobby was a cramped space, its walls stained yellow by years of neglect. A wiry woman with gray hair pinned haphazardly sat behind a counter, her eyes narrowing as Poirot and Catch entered. She chewed on a toothpick, sizing them up as if they were debt collectors. "Good afternoon, Madame," Poirot began, his tone polished but firm. "I am Hercule Poirot, and this is Inspector Edward Catchpool of Scotland Yard. We seek a man who may reside here, a man named Timothy, perhaps known to you." The woman's toothpick paused mid-chew. "Don't get many gentlemen like you here," she said, her voice gravelly. "Timothy, you say? Might be one or two by that name. What's he look like?" Poirot described the scant details Annabel had provided. A man in his 30s, lean, with dark hair and a scar above his left brow, a mark from a childhood accident, she'd said. The woman's eyes flickered with recognition, though she masked it quickly. "Could be Tim Cole," she muttered, glancing at a ledger. "Room 12, upstairs. But he don't like visitors, and I ain't one for trouble." Catchpool leaned forward, his badge glinting in the dim light. "We're not here to cause trouble, ma'am, just to ask questions. Point us to room 12, and we'll handle the rest." With a grunt, she jerked her thumb toward a creaking staircase. Poirot and Catchpool ascended, the steps groaning under their weight. The hallway above was narrow, lined with doors that seemed to sag in their frames. Room 12 was at the far end, its number barely legible on the chipped paint. Poirot knocked sharply, his cane poised like a conductor's baton. Silence answered, then a faint shuffle from within. "Monsieur Timothy," Poirot called, his voice carrying a note of authority. "It is Hercule Poirot. I wish to speak with you regarding Barnabas Pandy." The door cracked open, revealing a sliver of a man's face, pale, angular, with eyes like polished obsidian. The scar above his brow was unmistakable. "I don't know any Pandy," he said, his voice low and edged with suspicion. "You've got the wrong man." Poirot's smile was disarming, but his eyes were sharp. "Perhaps, monsieur, but I think not. May we enter? It is a matter of some urgency." The door opened wider, reluctantly, and Timothy Cole stepped back. The room was sparse: a sagging bed, a chipped wash basin, a single chair with a wobbly leg. A small window overlooked an alley where shadows danced in the fading light. Timothy was thin, almost skeletal, his clothes hanging loosely on his frame. His dark hair was unkempt, and his fingers twitched as he gestured to the chair. "Sit, if you want," he said, perching on the edge of the bed. "But I'm telling you, I don't know this Pandy fellow. You're wasting your time." Catchpool remained standing, his notebook in hand, while Poirot settled into the chair, his posture immaculate. "Monsieur Color, perhaps I should say, Monsieur Pandy," Poirot began, his tone conversational yet piercing. "Let us dispense with the pretense. You are Timothy, the son of Barnabas Pandy, are you not? The son who was cast out, denied his place in the family." Timothy's eyes narrowed, but he didn't deny it. "What's it to you? My father's dead, and I've got nothing to do with it. I haven't seen him in years." "Yet you contacted Mademoiselle Lenore Treadway," Poirot said, his voice smooth as silk. "Before his death, you demanded your share of his estate. A curious coincidence, Nan, that soon after, he drowns, and 4 letters appear, accusing others of his murder." Timothy's jaw tightened, his scar standing out starkly against his pale skin. "I don't know anything about letters. I wrote to Lenore because I heard the old man was ill. Thought maybe he'd softened with age. I was wrong." Poirot's gaze swept the room, noting the sparse belongings: a worn coat, a pair of scuffed boots, a small stack of papers on a rickety table. "You know the Pandy estate well, do you not? The layout, the routines. You could navigate it in the dark, perhaps." Timothy's laugh was bitter. "You think I sneaked in and drowned him? For what? A fortune I'll never see. Lenore made it clear I'd get nothing. She's got her claws in everything now." Catchpool interjected, his tone sharp. "If you're so innocent, why hide here? Why not come forward when Pandy died?" "Because I know how it looks," Timothy snapped. "A bastard son shows up, and suddenly the rich father's dead. I'd be in chains before I could blink." "I'm not stupid." Poirot leaned forward, his eyes glinting. "Nan, you are not stupid, Monsieur Timothy. But you are hiding something. Tell me, what do you know of the phrase 3/4? It appears in your father's notes, in a letter to his solicitor. It is a thread in this tapestry of deceit." Timothy's fingers stilled, and for a moment, his guarded expression faltered. 3/4 sounds like one of his mad theories. He was always scribbling nonsense, numbers, fractions, things that made no sense. If it's in his notes, ask Annabelle. She was his pet, always hovering over his shoulder. Poirot's mustache twitched again, a sign of satisfaction. "You know more than you say, monsieur. But let us explore another possibility. These letters, accusing Sylvia Rule, John McCrodden, Hugo Dockeril, and Annabelle Treadway, were they your attempt to stir chaos, to point fingers at those who profited from your exclusion?" Timothy stood abruptly, his hands clenched. "I told you, I didn't send any letters. Someone's trying to pin this on me. Maybe Lenore, maybe Annabelle. They've got more to lose than I do." Catchpool scribbled in his notebook, his brow furrowed. "If you're being framed, give us something to work with. Where were you the night Pandy died?" Timothy hesitated, his gaze darting to the window. "I was here, alone, no one to vouch for me. But I didn't kill him, I swear it." Poirot rose, his movements deliberate. "We shall see, Monsieur Timothy. But before we depart, I would like to examine your papers. A small formality, you understand." Timothy's eyes flashed with defiance, but he gestured to the table. "Go ahead. Nothing there but bills and scribbles." Poirot approached the table, his gloved fingers deftly sorting through the papers. Most were mundane receipts, a torn map of London, but one sheet caught his eye. It was tucked beneath a crumpled envelope, written in a precise hand that matched the accusatory letters. The words were few but chilling. "The 3/4 will fall, and the truth will rise." Poirot held up the paper, his expression unreadable. "And this, monsieur, mere scribble." Timothy's face drained of color. "That's not mine," Someone must have planted it. Planted it, Catchpool said, stepping closer. That's a convenient excuse. Poirot folded the paper carefully, slipping it into his pocket. We shall investigate this further, Monsieur Timothy. But know this, Hercule Poirot does not rest until the truth is laid bare. If you are innocent, you have nothing to fear. If you are not, the net tightens. As they left the boarding house, the evening fog was rolling in, wrapping the street in a ghostly shroud. Catchpool glanced at Poirot, his voice low. Do you believe him? About the letter being planted. Poirot's eyes gleamed in the lamplight. Belief, Catchpool, is a luxury I do not indulge. The evidence, it speaks. This note, it is too precise, too deliberate. Someone wishes us to find Timothy, to suspect him. But the question remains, who benefits from this shadow play? They walked in silence, the city's pulse fading into the mist. Poirot's mind was a whirlwind of connections, Timothy's bitterness, the cryptic 3/4, the forged letters, and the tampered bath at the Pandy estate. The puzzle was far from solved, but the discovery of the note had shifted the board. Timothy was either a pawn or a player, and Poirot was determined to find out which. Back at his flat, Poirot spread the note on his desk, its words stark against the lamplight. He summoned his valet, George, to fetch a magnifying glass, and spent hours studying the handwriting, comparing it to the accusatory letters. The ink, the slant, the flourishes, they were identical. Yet something nagged at him, a whisper of instinct, that the truth lay not in Timothy alone, but in the web connecting all 4 recipients. The night deepened, and Poirot sat back, his fingers steepled. The hidden heir, he murmured to himself. He is a piece of the puzzle, but not the picture entire. Tomorrow, Catchpool, we pursue the forger, for in the ink, we shall find the hand that moves the pen. The chapter closed with Poirot's resolve, unshaken, the note a beacon guiding him deeper into the mystery. Timothy's shadow loomed large, but the truth, as always, waited in the details only Poirot's little gray cells could unravel.